So we have it that Moses at his time would fast, and he would fast for 24 hours as a full duration. And before that, Mary, the mother of Jesus, she would fast. And her fast was a different type of fast in that generation, which was that they wouldn't speak. So it would sometimes take the form of not speaking, sometimes not take the form of not eating for 24 hours a day, and in the form of fasting for those of us who are of the Muslim faith, then it takes the form of not eating and drinking from sunrise to sunset. And that is an immense journey. And God tells us in this verse that the purpose of fasting is so that you gain a closeness to God, and you come closer to him by discovering your journey of your heart. And it is the journey of our heart which is the true essence of fasting. So often we communicate that it's not eating and drinking, which is important, and it gets us to really relate to those who are in difficult situations, those who are needy. However, one of the greatest aspects of fasting is a journey of the heart, of coming closer to God and to discover him through relinquishing your whims and your desires. And so, as we have the tradition of our Prophet, who would say some people fast in the month of Ramadan and all they gain is hunger and thirst, because they've gone on a journey with their tongues and their stomach, but they haven't gone on a journey with their heart and their character and their mannerisms. And so it is a true journey of the heart this month that we're about to embark on, and it's something that we look forward to. It is a challenge, and it is exciting for us, because then we go on a journey of gaining closeness to God by relinquishing those characteristics that maybe we've taken for granted. And so that journey of the heart is something that we encourage everybody to take on board. So mannerisms and character and ways of behaving which are kind and generous and gentle and loving and caring and respectful for others, all come under this banner of the month of Ramadan, the month of fasting. So it's with great excitement where the Muslim community looks forward to this in the month of Ramadan. And it's great excitement that we look forward to practicing the month of Ramadan in a safe way with COVID and with the restrictions that we have. And it'll be an interesting and fascinating journey for us, because it is a communal event. It is something that we do as a community together. So it's that's the thing that I wanted to really share with you about how all of us, whether you're part of the faith of Islam or other faith or none, can really look at our characteristics, our mannerisms, our ways of being, and really take that in this moment of our community and take that and spread that joy and that wonderful nature that we have to be able to bring success, joy, happiness, and a loving nature to humanity that will transform. So with that, I'm going to end by and conclude by saying some prayers. First in Arabic, Allahumma ighfir lil muslimina wal muslimat wal mu'minina wal mu'minat al ahya'u minhum wal amwat. We ask God to save and to assist all of humanity in their trials and tribulations and challenges that we go through on a daily basis, on a communal or an individual basis. Here in Britain and all over the world, we ask God to save our souls and guide us to the truth, and for wherever that may be and wherever that may be. And most of all, we ask him to join our hearts in this month of Ramadan to come closer to him and to earn his immense pleasure in this world and the hereafter. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. Thank you for having me this evening. I wish you a wonderful session and an immense benefit that you guys are giving to our community, and thank you once again for doing that, and thank you for having me this evening.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Imam Rao. Good evening, members, officers, members of the public. Welcome to this full council meeting, which is being held remotely and streamed live. At this point, I will ask all members present to acknowledge that they can hear the proceedings by indicating as such by raising your electronic hand. Can I please ask all of you to raise your hand so we know you can hear the proceedings? Yes, the number is still going up. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, including yourself, that's 51 members.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I've had a punch up with this computer, which I won't go into now, but I'll sort out tomorrow. Sorry, thank you.
We can hear you perfectly. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that would be 52 with Councillor Starr.
Okay. And thank you for confirming that you can hear me. I note that we have 52 councillors present. As the quorum for the council meeting is 16 councillors, so we can proceed. Can I also just remind all members, please, do not use the chat function other than official business. Try not to use it for chit chat, please. It would be appreciated. Thank you very much. To facilitate efficient decision making this evening, I propose that we make use of the raise your hand function when voting and that members indicate opposition to the recommendation rather than agreement. I will ask whether there are any objection to the recommendation in the report and request all those objecting to the recommendation to raise their hand. Once those hands are lowered, I will then ask anyone abstaining to raise their hand. Everyone else will be deemed to be voting in support of the recommendation. That's my proposal. Could someone please second that?
I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Can any member objecting to this proposal please do so by raising your hand? So no one has objected it. It's all agreed. The change in voting procedure for this meeting is agreed. Thank you. Please,
Mr. Mayor, can I just request Imam to just lower his hand because I think so he mistakenly keep his hands up.
Okay. Imam, can you please lower your hand? Thank you. It's 51 then, yeah? 50. We've got 51 councillors present. Please remember to remain on mute unless I call you to speak, and also to unmute your microphone when speaking. If you lose your audio feed, you should indicate this using the chat function. You should use the raise your hand function if you wish to speak at any point during the meeting and wait to be called upon. Starting agenda item number 1, apologies for absence.
Mr. Mayor, I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed, Councillor Linda Huggett and Councillor Serena Sangha. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
Councillor Kay Flint, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kay Flint. Okay. We move on to agenda item number 2 now, minutes. May I please sign the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting and the budget council meeting held on 25th February 2021 when printed in the minute book. Yes? Can I sign the minutes, please?
Agreed. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item number 3, declarations of interest. All members in attendance and officers reminded of the requirement to consider whether they have an interest in any matter on the agenda that needs to be disclosed, and if so, to declare that interest when the council reaches that item on the agenda. Agenda item number 4, correspondence. Fiona?
Mr. Mayor, there is no correspondence.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5, mayor's announcement. I would like to acknowledge the work of our outgoing Chief Executive, Andy Donald, since this is the last council meeting before he leaves office. As mayor of this borough, I would like to thank him publicly for his excellent work during his tenure as Chief Executive of Redbridge Council. He took over the reins of this council at a time of great change and through dynamic and effective leadership oversaw the implementation of major programs and projects in spite of severe and sustained financial pressures. In particular, his leadership during the last year, steering the council through this very challenging COVID-19 pandemic has been no less than extraordinary, and we express our thanks to him. May I now call on the leader of the council, Councillor Jez Athwal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to associate myself with your comments. It would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to recognise the fantastic work done by Andy Donald. Even though he is a Nottingham Forest supporter and has been devoid of any trophies for the last 41 years, he's still done well. Andy's been with us for 5 years now, and in that time he has really left his mark on this council. He's seen us through the biggest council house building programme in a decade, through the creation of new libraries, new leisure centres, redesign of new and existing services at some of the toughest times that we've had to face. More recently, Andy has kept the ship steady whilst navigating through the worst public health crisis in a generation. Through the COVID pandemic, Andy has worked tirelessly with our administration to do everything possible to keep local people safe and well. Throughout the years, Andy has been an excellent chief executive, but more than that, he's been a friend. I know that I'm not alone when I say that he will truly be missed. And for that, I thank you, Andy. I wonder if you could unmute yourself, and can we have a round of applause for Andy Donald and wish him all the best. No doubt is right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just a minute, please. Apologies about that. We had a bit of problem with the IP. And I now call on the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Councillor Berlin, to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to also echo your words about Andy Donald, and also Councillor Athol, what you said, and certainly agree with you with regard to Andy's work for residents and for councillors. So the Redbridge Conservative Group would like to say a big thank you, Andy, for your service to the council, and particularly in this last year. It must have been very, very difficult for you during COVID year. You've had to make key decisions, and I think you've got it right. We worked really well with you, so we want to say a big thank you from the Redbridge Conservative Group. On a personal level, I've had questions and not sure where to go to over the weekend. I've sent you off emails and you replied to me on a Sunday afternoon, getting urgent things done. And that's a wonderful thing to know that there's somebody at the top we can rely upon in difficult times to assist our residents. So thank you again, and we wish you all the very best in the future.
Thank you. Now we move on to agenda item number 6. Questions from members of the public.
Mr. Mayor, 2 questions have been received from members of the public.
I will shortly ask the questioners to ask the question. I will remind speakers that they have only permitted to ask the question that was submitted and approved in advance. The answers given by the cabinet member or the leader will be of a maximum duration of 2 minutes, at the end of which the bell will be rung. The questioner may then submit one supplementary question that is directly related to their main question, for which the answer will be of a maximum duration of 1 minute, at the end of which the bell will be rung. The first question is from Alvin Freak. Please read your question. Malvin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, please read your question.
Thank you. The Redbridge Climate Change Corporate Panel Report, received and accepted by Council in November 2020, identified buildings as the largest source of emissions for both the borough and the council. It laid out options with timescales from short to long term and cost from low to very high. Which of these recommendations are being followed up, and what steps has the council taken so far?
I ask the leader of the council, Councillor Athwal, to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Freak, for your question. And I'd like to assure you that tackling the effects of climate change are extremely important to us as a council. It's vital we all act now to reduce the carbon emissions and make the world a greener and safer place for our children and generations that follow us. That's why we set up a climate change corporate panel to determine what we could do as a council to tackle the climate crisis. We're currently drafting a 3-year action plan in response to the panel's recommendations, which will be presented to Cabinet in May, and will set out the various actions that Council will adopt across the themes property and energy, cleaner journeys, waste procurement and investment, and enabling others to achieve carbon neutrality for those emissions in the Council's direct control. The action plan will be annually monitored and include reporting on the Council's direct emissions. Since November, we've already started reducing the Council's direct emissions by continuing our programme to install smart metering across the corporate estate. We also rolled out our first electric vehicles. We have received funding to begin a programme to retrofit both council homes and private-owned homes in the borough, and have launched a Go Green grants programme to help homeowners and landlords in the borough to improve the energy efficiency of their homes through the installation of low-carbon heating improvements. Alongside all this work, we have consulted with residents on rolling out school streets, a new green urban landscape policy, and hosted various workshops on producing less waste. There is a lot we can and we will do as a council, but we appreciate we also have a role as a community leader, and we want to encourage local businesses and residents to join us in taking steps to reduce carbon emissions and protect our planet. Thank you, Mr. Freak.
Mr. Freak, do you wish to ask a supplementary question about the recommendation in the climate change report?
Yes, please. And I'd like to say that asking the question is an acceptance of a responsibility as a member of the public, and knowing how we can join with you as a council to do it. I'd like to ask whether your climate impact assessment is addressing the areas in the report about the carbon offset fund and the climate impact assessments.
I ask the leader, council to reply again.
Thank you. As I said, sir, we're looking at every opportunity as we go forward, and certainly we've got the work of the corporate panel. Eunomia was commissioned to undertake a green audit of the council's emissions. We're making sure that we try and leave no stone unturned to ensure that we do take our responsibility as seriously as we possibly can, because this is one of the biggest problems facing our planet, and we will play our role. We will get this right. But the report came out in November, and amongst that we are also in the middle of a pandemic, but this will be kept on the front burner as we go forward, and we will be working on this at every opportunity, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Freak, the response of the leader as set out in the official minutes will be sent to you. The second question is from Andy Walker. Please, Mr. Walker, read your question.
Thank you, Mayor. Leader, will you agree, in light of your business motion this evening, supporting our NHS heroes, to support the campaign for a new wing at King George Hospital?
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your question. And I think the Mr. Mayor has already made it very, very clear that if the questions are not the same, we will not answer them, because so you do this every single time. You're the only resident who does it. It's not the question that you've asked and that you've got printed. I'm not going to take this on. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of Council. Mr. Walker, you heard them replied, and you've been made aware of it in the past as well, and at the beginning of this meeting today as well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. The next is agenda item number 7, petitions. Petition presented by members. Will any members who have petitions to present please raise their electronic hand? Can you see any? There are no petitions today. Yeah. Okay. We have a petition for debate this evening. The procedure for petition for debate is that I will ask the lead petitioners to speak for up to 5 minutes in support of the petition. At the end of this period, the bell will be rung and the petitioner will return to their seat. The matter will then be open for debate by members for a period of up to 15 minutes, at the end of which the council will decide how it intends to respond to the petition. Agenda item number 7A, petition for debate, closure of Fairlock sailing. The petition contains excess of 1,600 signatures and the council say Fairlock Sailing School from closure. I welcome Matthew Belchin, who will be presenting the petition. I call Matthew Belchin to address the council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this evening I'm representing the users of the Fairlock Outdoor Activity Centre. There's been a water centre on the lake since the 1960s. In 2019, over 70 schools and youth groups used the centre, and at its peak, over 250 young people used it on a single day. Today, the centre looks sorry and unloved, but it is being opened again. Its operating licence is being reinstated, boats have been recovered from the water, and with luck, our young people will be on the water again soon. Throughout the year, the experienced coaches at FOAC teach young people to paddle, sail, row, to build rafts, manage power boats, and even to save lives. Young people learn there to work together, taking responsibility for themselves and for others. Sport England and the 4 national bodies for water sports in the UK provide sponsorship, training and support to the centre. In turn, FOAC provides the coaching and certification that allows adults and teenagers to lead and coach others through the training courses that it runs. 14 Scout, Guide and Cadet groups depend on the centre, as well as schools, special educational needs groups, sight and hearing impaired groups, and individuals with other physical and mental challenges. On the water, FOAC allows everyone to be equal. Many of the young people that use the centre continue the sport throughout their adult lives, in some cases going on to lead youth groups themselves across the UK. Redbridge has nothing else like it, and many of the groups that use the centre could not do what we do without it. Young people make up 22% of Redbridge residents. For them, the physical and the mental fitness that FOAC provides are as important as the libraries and the swimming pools that Redbridge supports through its funding of Vision RCL. While more of the centre could fund itself, and at the time open up more access, FOAC represents social equality. Everyone should be able to get onto the water and to afford it. The council has promised a bigger and better centre. As those plans become clearer, FOAC must remain open to everyone. Over 9,000 people have now asked you to do this for us. As one of the biggest user groups on the lake, you need our help to shape this important space for the future, and that we ask that you openly work with us as you plan for the future of Fairlock. The government has laid out clear plans with schools and youth groups to return to organised outdoor activities from the start of the summer term, including water activities. As currently planned, however, the centre will not open for group activities. That's over 90% of its business until the end of June. That's the end of the summer term when COVID restrictions are removed. Schools and organised youth groups already have exceptions from social distancing restrictions. We ask the council again that the centre be opened as soon as its licence is restored. The removal of council funding in the recent budget approval looks likely to result in the centre closing its doors throughout the winter period. Youth and adult groups rely on FOAC all year round, and they must be able to continue to do so. FOAC should not be regarded as a summer tourist attraction. In summary, we ask to keep the centre open all year and every year, to keep it financially accessible to support Redbridge youth, and to work with us, its users, as new plans evolve or as problems arise, openly, transparently, and together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The recommendations before the council are in paragraph 2.1 to 2.2 on page 17 of the agenda. I now open the matter up for debate by members only for a period of up to 15 minutes. I will remind members that they may speak for up to 3 minutes, after which the bell will be rung. To assist the members in their deliberation on the matter, a report is at pages 17 to 20 of the agenda. We will now I'll open up the debate now. I've got Councillor Dev Sharma to speak. Councillor Sharma, can you hear me? Or we can come back to that. Can I ask Councillor Sue Nolan to speak, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I think the issue here tonight is that although there appears to be a certain amount of goodwill to see the Fairlock Outdoor Sailing Centre thrive, there's no funding in the budget for the next 2 years. It was a real shame, I think, that the video which the young people of the sailing centre produced wasn't permitted to be heard tonight, and I ask why not. I've seen it, and it's an amazing, passionate speech by those young people, so it's such a shame that it was not allowed. However, as currently planned, the centre is still not open for group activities. Over 90% of the business until the end of June, the end of the summer term, when all COVID restrictions are removed. The government has laid out clear plans for the schools and youth groups to return to organised outdoor activities from the start of the summer term, including water activities. Schools and organised youth groups already have an exemption from social distancing restrictions, which remove many from the difficulty in operating the centre today. So please tell us why it cannot be opened before that. Surely the licence, once it's restored, it can open. The centre needs to be an all-round operation and make it accessible for all the youth of Redbridge. It's vital we have this centre open as soon as possible. Councillor Atwell, at a meeting I attended with the users and lots of the young people, I was absolutely amazed that you said you knew nothing of the closure and tried to put the blame onto Vision, when the proposal to remove the subsidy was in your budget proposals that went to Cabinet in December. The removal of this subsidy means it will have to close over the winter period, as been said by Matthew. It's an outdoor centre, and then it should not be used just for the summer. A question I may ask is that they have brilliant coaches and teaching staff there that I understand were sacked. Without proper trained staff, it can't operate. Have those members of staff been approached to renew their contracts? Volunteers have come forward to assist in restoring the neglected centre, but the centre is still closed. Listen to their video and hear the words of our young people. Their story: everyone can use the facilities of the water. The centre makes all the young people equal, no matter what. Redbridge is nothing like it in the borough, and as been said, 22% of the population of this borough is young. It's the youth. We should be looking after them for after a difficult year, enabling them to have fun and to thrive. So please make sure this important place remains for all and opens as soon as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Atwell next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I address the petition. It's closed, Councillor Nolan, because it's illegal to actually open it at the moment. And secondly, I knew nothing of the closure at that particular meeting because it wasn't due to be closed. That's why. And I think being a little bit dishonest there, that you're concerned about the closure, because it was never down for closure. Now, addressing the petition, thank you for joining us at full council tonight. Appreciate how important the sailing centre is to you, to our local people, and certainly to the youngsters. It was good to meet with you recently to discuss your concerns, and I'm aware that the council officers and Vision staff have also held several meetings with you, sir. I am proud we're doubling the size of Fairlop Waters and spearheading a multi-million-pound investment into London's most high-profile biodiverse project across the whole of the capital. Fairlop Waters is one of our most beloved local parks, and the outdoor activities centre is just outstanding, including the sailing centre. You know, it's a big part of what we are about. Over the last 10 years, the council has subsidised the outdoor activity centre by over £1 million, funds invested in to support the centre to become successful. As you know, I'm hugely supportive of the outdoor activity centre and the fantastic work that the centre does. Young people across our borough deserve access to a range of fun and exciting outdoor and indoor activities, and many of these are available at Fairlop Waters. The reality of being in administration is having to balance services with costs and needs across the borough, and following a 63% cut to the funding, we've had to be innovative. That's why we committed early on in the Fairlop Waters project to creating brand new sailing facilities with new boats to reduce repair costs and provide a better service for local people and community groups. There is an ongoing consultation so we can hear from as many people as possible who visit Fairlop to integrate all their views and experiences and wishes into the final design of the park. Sadly, Europe is facing a third wave of the pandemic. We have no way of knowing when and how this could affect the UK, and we cannot and we will not be reckless with the safety of our local people, despite what Councillor Nolan says. One of the things the pandemic has robbed us of is surety about the future. In my view, government guidance is very clear. We will continue to follow that guidance, and our facilities will open when it is both safe and commercially viable to do so. Of course, the roadmap out of the lockdown is subject to changes in transmission of the virus, so we will continue to track. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to finish by saying local users have been invited to make their bookings, and I'm optimistic that we will get this centre reopened when the restrictions are lifted. And I'm certainly proud to announce that we will be investing £55,000 in 26 brand new boats, which will be on the water in time for the opening of this particular Fairlop Outdoor Activity Centre. I really want to thank the team for coming here, attending this meeting, and please stay in touch with the council and our operator Vision. We want to work together. We want to work with you to improve the fantastic service offer available at Fairlop Waters. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, can I just raise a point here? Could everybody please put their microphones on mute while somebody's speaking? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask next Councillor Howard, John Howard, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Matthew, for your introduction into the petition. I think you've given a really good outline as to why outdoor education is really important, not just as a educational tool, but also as a way for young people to sort of find out more about themselves and grow in character and sort of learn to do different things. So even as an East London borough, I think we're very lucky to have such a great cultural green offering on our doorstep. And I think it is really important. It's why I'm so pleased about the statements Councillor Attle's given on a number of occasions, I think now, around securing the future of the outdoor activity centre and sort of committed to reopening it as soon as practically possible. It's a really important part of our cultural offering, and like you've said, it's not just about libraries and our multiple swim pools that we've built on this administration, but also about things like the Outdoor Activity Centre and sort of the options we can give to other people. And I was also wondering, as you were speaking, whether I'm in fact the only councillor who secured their one-star British Canoeing Union at Fellow Waters, whether I was the one who's sort of lucky enough to be plunged into the lake, which I don't recommend. Although I am looking forward to going canoeing with Councillor Nolan in December. She's so keen on winter water sports. I think the crucial thing, so why I'm pleased it's opening and why I believe it's part of our wider investment into the area, is that it does need updating. So I haven't been in there or in the lake physically in the lake for a while, but it definitely needs investment. And actually scoping out the long-term plan is why I'm pleased the leader and the cabinet member are engaging with you around the future proposals around the Outdoor Activity Centre, upgrading the changing facilities, making it a bit nicer, looking at things like new boats and new things we can do on the lake to make it better. In terms of the timing when it opens, I was at a meeting of another third sector provider of outdoor education for young people not too far from Fellow Waters. And I think the question is around doing it safely. Government guidance is guidance. And actually there are our own constraints on the site and in terms of other factors that may lead you to open later. So I've no doubt we'll open it as quick as we can, but we need to make sure it's safe. It's safe to do so and it's ready. And I just wanted to reflect on the, I thought Councillor Nolan spoke very well actually around the Outdoor Education Centre and why it's important. And she raised a number of, I thought very good questions, all questions that would have been excellent at any of the 3 committee meetings in scrutiny that the budget process went to, which I'm sure Councillor Rye will correct me, but I'm pretty sure there were no questions on the Outdoor Education Centre. So I've no problem with, opposition councillors finding a bandwagon to jump on and launch a campaign. It does help if you do it before everyone else notices though. So I think any of the questions would have been excellent beforehand at the committee stage. And I think later on we have Councillor Atholl's right, it's all about balancing priorities. And, we've had a 63% cut to government. So I'm looking forward to the opposition's support for our motion later on local government's financing. And actually it would be, although I don't think that, the opposition don't care about some of our services. So I think they do for the most part, but I want to see them campaign for some of the government funding coming our way. So with the reinstatement of our 63% or some of the levelling up funding come our way, which seems to be designed to hit everywhere apart from Redbridge. So I'm looking forward to their support on further funding for Redbridge services locally. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask next Councillor Berlin next, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Matthew for your excellent presentation. And I also want to say thank you to each of the now 9,000 residents who have taken the time to sign this important local petition. What you have demonstrated is how important it is to protest, to protect our local facilities, because many are under threat. You are all an inspiration to all those Redbridge residents who value what is great about Redbridge and who want to protect our key facilities for future generations to enjoy. Mr. Mayor, it's important to scroll back a few weeks, back to the day when Vision emailed the staff to say they were being sacked and that the centre would not be reopening. It's solely due to your well-run and very professional campaign that this administration were forced to do yet another U-turn. So Redbridge Conservative Group say well done to you. My message to the campaign group is that we in the Redbridge Conservative Group were with you from day one, and we are here to assist the campaign in the future. We have worked with you and we are happy to work with Vision. Mr. Mayor, why is this so important? It's important as we, like you, want to see the facilities preserved for future generations to enjoy. Mr. Mayor, we don't have an issue with the centre operating on a more commercial basis, but it appears that Vision is unlikely to allow the centre to try to become self-sufficient, because we understand that Vision would prefer a private company to run a private boat hire on the lake for a fee. The issue we have is that a private operator will be making profits that Vision could be making by running the public boat hire itself. Therefore, there is no certainty that the money earned from a third party will be used to assist the finances of the centre. And we also understand, Mr. Mayor, that the centre will not operate in the winter period, which would impact around a dozen youth groups that operate all year round. Closing the centre completely during the winter will prevent the council from earning money to offset against its year-round fixed costs. There is a huge danger that this valuable teaching resource for young people being treated and transformed to a summer tourist attraction for occasional users with their ice creams on their paddle boats. This is not what we want. Mr. Mayor, this activity centre is so important to the community that what is needed is a cross-party working party set up by the council, which would include cross-party councillors, vision and local residents and the youth. And I hope that this will be taken up as soon as possible. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Nolan correctly referred to the video by the youth of Fairlop. And I would encourage every council member to spend time looking at this. It is so important. Spend time looking at this. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and well done to all you in the campaign group.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I raise a point of order?
Yes, Leader.
Councillor Berlin talks about the private boat hire. That's got nothing to do with the Fairlop Outdoor Activity Centre. That is it's an operator brought in by Vision. He's absolutely misleading everybody by what he has just said. It should not be allowed to just, state whatever you want. At least stick to the facts, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I will now ask Councillor Wright to speak. You will be the last speaker on this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the petitioner today, Matthew, for bringing your petition here. It's interesting to hear from the opposition. I've heard from Councillor Berlin talking about being with the petitioners from day one, yet he had 3 months of budget consultations and he didn't ask one question, not a single question. Not a single question to officers, not a single question to me, not a single question to the leader, whose portfolio it was at the time. Not a single question across the board was asked by him or any one of the other 11 Conservative councillors, and yet he claims to have been with people from day one. And the reason, Mr. Mayor, that he didn't ask a question is because there is, and there never was, and there never has been a plan to close the Fairlop Outdoor Activity Centre. Not once has there been a plan for that. If there was, then why did they remain quiet in October, November, December and January and February? Why did they remain quiet throughout that whole period when the budget was presented to them? Are they saying they couldn't read it or they didn't understand it because they didn't ask a question on it? Now, I just going to the Fairlop Sailing Centre, I think as a councillor, I recognise its value. I know its value as a resident, and I know its value as a parent. My children have used it. But we are going to reopen it from the closure that has been forced upon us due to COVID. That was inevitable, and it will be reopened based on safety, based on bookings, to make sure there are people who want to come through the door and actually use it, and to make sure that it's ready and maintained. So as we said, the guidance is in place, and it's our duty now to make sure that we open it safely and so that people can use it properly. It's important to understand, and we're going to have a debate on this later, that when you have a 63% cut in your funding, things are going to change. Subsidies that have been traditionally in place will have to be reviewed. Our services will have to look at becoming more commercial and actually becoming more self-sustainable. That's inevitable. I'd much rather that than we close them. And our record speaks for itself. We don't close services. We change them, we make them profitable, we make them work, we make them, but we don't close them. And that's our record, and that has been our record. Councillor Nolan spoke about no money being in the budget for...
Can you please conclude?
Okay. Mr. Mayor, all I'd like to say really, and just to reiterate, is that we will protect the sailing centre for the long term. The Fairlop Master Plan, which has been fed in and has had amazing consultation, will make the sailing centre and Fairlop Waters far more popular, a much better place to go to, and viable for the long term. And so I think, Matthew, you can rest assured, as can every resident who has signed the petition, unfortunately under false pretenses, because it's never been closing, that the sailing centre and Fairlop Waters will go from strength to strength.
Thank you. We'll now go to the vote on the recommendation in paragraph 2.1 to 2.2 on page 17. Those who are voting against the recommendation, please raise your hand.
Note. It's for noting.
Pardon? Recommendations in paragraphs, yeah? If you're against it, please raise your hand.
Councillor
Mr Mayor,
Berting.
that's 1 against, which means that that is carried.
There's none against, Antoinette. Mr Mayor, I think Councillor Berting had a hand up by mistake.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you. So the recommendations are agreed. May I thank Matthew Belchin for his presentation of the petition and confirm that the council decision will be advised to him in writing and published in accordance with the petition scheme. Now we move on to agenda item number 8, deputations.
Mr Mayor, there are no deputations.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9, to consider appointments and terms of references of committees and other bodies.
Mr Mayor, there are no reports to consider under this item.
Thank you. Agenda item number 10, officer reports. Agenda item number 10A, pay policy for 2021 to 2022. This report concerns the council's pay policy for 2021/22. The recommendations are set out on page 21 of the agenda. Are the recommendations on page 21 of the agenda agreed? All agreed? Do we need to go to the vote? Or?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Next item is number 10B, corporate calendar of meetings. This report concerns the council's calendar of meetings for 2021/22. The recommendation is set out in paragraph 2.1 on page 41 of the agenda. Is the recommendation on page 41 of the agenda agreed? Yeah, I take it it's all agreed. There's no. Yeah. Do we need to go to a vote or recommendation agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. The recommendation is agreed. And statement, agenda item number 11, statement to council.
Mr Mayor, there are no statements to be made.
Thank you. Agenda item number 12, questions from members. There are 20 questions from councillors. I will shortly ask each councillor to ask their question. The answer given by the cabinet member or leader will be of a maximum duration of 2 minutes, at the end of which the bell will be rung. One relevant supplementary question will then be allowed, which will first be offered to the original questioner and for which the answer will be of a maximum duration of 1 minute, at the end of which the bell will be rung. I call upon Councillor George Islam to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is to the council leader. I understand as part of Women's Night Safety Charter, the council has appointed a champion to actively promote women's safety. Please can you let us know who that champion is, and can you share the role they will play in supporting women both within our council and in our communities?
I call upon the leader of the council, Councillor Athwal, to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Islam, for your question. Following the shocking and tragic murder of Sarah Everard, there was an outpouring of grief and anger. It's clear far too many women still feel vulnerable and unsafe when going out in London or across Redbridge, which is completely unacceptable. As a council, we wanted to take immediate action, but we also wanted to ensure dramatic and long-term change. We immediately signed up to the Mayor's Women's Night Safety Charter and appointed a women's champion to advance the key work necessary to make Redbridge a safer and more welcoming place for our local women and girls. I'm incredibly proud to announce that Councillor Saima Ahmed will take the role of our women's champion. Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. You will do a fantastic job. As part of her role, Councillor Ahmed will, 1, help understand that women's safety is a shared responsibility. 2, give time and resources to undertake activity and advocacy that leads to practical and cultural change. 3, engage colleagues constructively and positively when taking action to address women's safety and encouraging others to do so. 4, empower colleagues, communities and residents to challenge unsafe language, behaviours and practice. And 5, improve local systems for reporting safety concerns. Mr. Mayor, appointing a women's champion is one of a series of measures we're taking as a council to make Redbridge a safer place for women and girls. Thank you to Councillor Ahmed for stepping up into the role, and I look forward to working closely with you on this very critical issue. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a supplementary question, if that's okay.
On mute, sorry.
Sorry, can you please ask your supplementary question, Councillor Islam?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I also ask the leader that do we expect the champion to Councillor Ahmed to remain in this role on a permanent basis for the council?
Can I ask the Leaders Council to reply, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Islam, for your supplementary question. Yes, absolutely. This is a permanent appointment. We are committed to making the borough safer now and into the future. I expect this work to be in-depth, wide-ranging and ongoing. The role will remain an important part of the way we engage with local communities, empower women and girls and embed change. There, of course, will be quick action we can take now, but we want the actions we take to be meaningful and well-informed. Our Women Champion will be part of this critical work now and long, long into the future. It's here to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations.
The next question is from Councillor Garfield. May I ask Councillor Garfield to ask her question?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Leader, a few weeks ago on Saturday, we held a council vigil for Sarah Everard and for all girls and women who have experienced violence. You announced that the council will set up a listening exercise for women of our borough to share their experiences. Please, can you tell us more about the listening exercise and what it will involve?
I call upon the Leader of the Council to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Garfield, for your question. We organised the vigil to remember Sarah and to reflect upon the tragedy that had unfolded earlier in that week, but also to acknowledge the epidemic of violence against women and girls taking place in our country, in our borough and across the world. It's a simple truth that everyone should feel safe and should be safe to walk home alone. Since Sarah first went missing, there has been an incredible sharing of experiences online between friends, family members, and in communities. Women are speaking, and it is our time to listen. That's why I'm launching a wide-ranging, in-depth listening exercise in Redbridge, which will take place over the next 3 months. Our council will host a series of virtual meetings, virtual discussions with local women and girls and women police officers, so we can hear directly how they feel, what they have experienced, and what we must do as a council, as a community, as a borough. Our council will, in conjunction with the virtual discussions tonight, we have launched a survey. I would ask everyone who identifies as a woman to please complete the survey. It's available on the front page of the council's website. The survey and online events will directly inform the action we take to make Redbridge safer and tackle violence and fear of violence. The first listening session will take place in mid-April, and our council will co-host the discussion with Redbridge CVS. The listening sessions will be completely safe, and it is our hope that over the series of sessions, women from all ages and communities will feel comfortable to join us and share their experience, or even just come to listen. In order to keep this session small, so everyone feels heard and comfortable, residents will be asked to sign up in advance on the council's website. We're keen to take action to generate meaningful change, Mr. Mayor, and we will do so, and we will provide women with the safe space to provide us with their views. Together, we will tackle violence against women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garfield, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Thank you, Leader, for that really detailed explanation. But how long do you plan for the listening exercise to continue for? And how many women and girls do you expect to hear from?
Leader of the Council, Councillor Athwal, to reply again, please.
Thank you, Councillor Garfield, for your supplementary. We want to hear from as many women and girls and organisations as possible. The survey has now gone live and will be open for 12 weeks. The events will be held in the middle of April all the way through to May and June. And then we will carry this forward once we've taken stock initially of the first 3 months. As I said earlier, this is not going to end anytime soon. What we want to do is go on this journey, make sure the lessons we learn can be implemented so all women, all girls can walk in safety. From fear of violence, we want to eradicate that, and we will do our utmost to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I call upon Councillor Brewer to ask her question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Leader, last week our council signed the Mayor's Women's Night Safety Charter. Firstly, I would like to congratulate you and our council for recognising that women's safety is an incredibly important issue and for signing the charter. Please can you share the steps you are taking to implement the recommendations of the charter?
I call upon the leader to reply, please.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer, for your question. It's been an incredibly difficult and devastating time for women, both in Redbridge and across the country. As a council, we want to take immediate action to tackle violence against women and girls, to improve safety locally and to ensure women are able to feel safe. Of course, these are huge, important and complex problems that require detailed solutions. And that is why our first step has been set up to listen. If we can listen, we can then take the next steps. However, as an immediate response to signal that we are committed to tackling this issue and how to show, to show how important we consider violence against women and girls, we have signed up to the Mayor of London's Women Night Safety Charter. As part of our commitment to that charter, we have appointed our women champion, Councillor Saima Ahmed. And as mentioned earlier tonight, we have launched a survey scheduled a series of listening exercises. More widely, as a council, we've developed our reach out service to tackle domestic abuse and introduced non-court ordered DV perpetrator programs for the first time in Redbridge to give perpetrators of abuse the help they need to change their behaviour. We have also commissioned Safe Lives Review into domestic violence to improve local services, undertaken largest ever community engagement exercise focused on crime, resulting in over 2,500 survey responses and over 300 residents giving their views on crime and safety in public meetings in the last few months. To make Redbridge safer, we invested £2 million in CCTV to upgrade picture quality to HD, move from analog to digital, increase coverage, provide 24 hours a day monitoring and install ANPR cameras across the borough. We also upgraded all street lighting to LED in recent years to increase street light strength in areas where the public have reported crime. There is clearly more we can do and must do. And Mr. Mayor, listening to women across our community will allow us to develop additional interventions to respond to the community's concerns. Thank you, Councillor Brewer, for asking the question.
Thank you, Leader. Do you wish to ask a supplementary question, Councillor Brewer?
I do, please, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask what are the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve from signing up to the Charter, please?
I call upon the leader to reply again.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer, for your supplementary question. Our plan and our hope is to demonstrate to women locally that we care about this issue and we're committed to tackling violence, reducing fear of violence and making Redbridge a safer, more welcoming place. We also want to empower local residents, community groups and businesses to join us in doing all they can to stop the violence, harassment and abuse of women. whether that be by reporting it to the relevant authorities, providing a safe space in a shop or a cafe, or helping promote the services available for people experiencing abuse. We will do lots more, but we've started on that journey and we will certainly complete it. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Councillor Uddin to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Leader of the Council update us the Growth Commission, and when can we expect the Council response to the recommendations?
I call upon the Leader to reply, please.
Thank you, Councillor Uddin, for your question. We first set up the Growth Commission to find new ways of engaging with local people, businesses and communities so we could share the benefits of our borough, growing with them, learn from their experiences, use local knowledge to inform development. We successfully launched the Growth Commission report, Growing Redbridge Together, on the 19th of February this year, and the report was approved by Cabinet on the 16th of March 2021. The report set out a series of cross-cutting objectives for organisational, cultural and practice in council, alongside 7 key recommendations to translate the principles into actions that the council, its partners and local communities can consider and explore. The Growth Commission recommendations will be integrated into existing strategy development and project development going forward to make sure we empower our residents to impact and influence growth in our borough. Work is progressing to co-produce a delivery plan that responds to the Commission, which includes a series of community and officer workshops to further explore and prioritise initial activity. We will be bringing a response and delivery plan back to Cabinet in autumn later this year. Thank you, Councillor Uddin.
Do you wish to ask a supplementary question, Councillor Uddin?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Please do ask.
Can the Leader explain a little bit more? Given the difficult year that we have had, will the recommendation include well-being, for example, mental health, physical health aspect, as this was not the primary purpose of the Commission?
I call upon the Leader to reply again.
Thank you, Councillor Uddin, for your supplementary. Absolutely agree. Supporting residents' well-being is vitally important to us. The Fairness Commission is a live document and is incorporated in everything the Council does. The Growth Commission has prepared a set of recommendations and is now up to the Council to consider them and deliver an action plan to implement, and well-being can and will form part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
I now call upon Councillor Canal to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The hospitality industry has been severely impacted by the COVID pandemic. Could the Leader please outline what measures Redbridge Council has taken, what measures the Council plans to take to support this vital industry in our borough, including public houses and bars?
I call upon the Leader to reply, please.
Thank you, Councillor Canal, and apologies for returning your call very late, sir. The pandemic has created an incredible, difficult environment for businesses across the country, and the impact has been particularly significant on the hospitality industry. The fact that in Redbridge alone, over 145,000 people have been vaccinated and COVID-19 cases continue to fall gives me great hope that government proposal to reopen hospitality for outdoor dining and drinking from the 12th of April will be a success, and I may share a Diet Coke with you, sir. In the meantime, through successive lockdowns, we have delivered grants to support businesses, including those in the retail, hospitality, leisure sectors. Grants of over £47 million were issued to local businesses up to September 2020. And since then, we have awarded a further 14.5 million to those businesses forced to close, those that are open but have been severely impacted by socialising restrictions. From April 2021, Redbridge Council will be paying restart grants between 6,000 and 18,000 per premises. Underpinning all of this work, we have a discretionary grant scheme for businesses that have ongoing fixed costs but have not been able to access other grants. This discretionary scheme continues through the year 2021-2022 until the funding is exhausted. Throughout the pandemic, our business and enterprise service has been doing an excellent job providing businesses with regular communications and information updates about policy and legal requirements. As a council, we also work with enterprise agencies and London Business Hub to make sure that businesses in Redbridge can access the support they need during the recovery. We're currently developing a programme of support for businesses that have been severely affected by socialising restrictions as a result of the pandemic. Councillor Canal, there is a lot more I can say, but as ever, Mr. Mayor has curtailed my answer.
Thank you. Do you wish to ask a supplement question, Councillor?
If I may, sir.
Please do so.
I thank the leader for his answer. As he has stated, and as we know, the government and the council are committed to doing all they can to allow our pubs and bars to open safely. A public house in Walstead, the Nightingale on the Green, has been using a small stretch of pavement for over 30 years. Will the leader agree to facilitate a meeting as soon as possible with me, the owner Frank Lampard Senior and officers to resolve a technical impasse that has recently prohibited the use of this pavement, which actually goes nowhere, to assist in enabling this much valued and loved local institution to reopen safely and successfully on April the 12th, where I'll be happy to buy the leader a Diet Coke.
I call upon the leader to reply again.
As long as I would say anything for the Diet Coke, Councillor Canal, and an opportunity to see Frank Lampard Senior, somebody who I remember very fondly from my childhood, and of course helping a local resident. I will attend any meeting anywhere. Thank you.
Now I call upon Councillor Hannah Chowdhury to ask her question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, could the Cabinet member please advise whether the guidance received in relation to A-level and GCSE grading for 2021 is fair, just and reasonable for all our children, irrespective of whichever school they attend?
I call upon the Cabinet member for Children and Young People to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, for your question. No one would want to see a rerun of the grades fiasco of last year, and thankfully there'll be no use of the algorithm which produced results that were blatantly unfair to certain students in certain schools. The current guidance clearly focuses on ensuring an equitable process for all schools, regardless of context. In this way, there should be a unified approach that all schools will use, given the fact that there are less stringent parameters from exam boards and which the award the grades provided by teachers. The system should allow the grading to be fair, reasonable and just, because teachers must only assess student performance based on what has been delivered. Teachers are able to use a broad range of evidence that's been generated by each school in order to make their judgments when awarding grades. The teacher grades can be determined right up to the point of submission to the exam boards to allow sufficient time for determining the grade. Report materials provided by the exam board can be used by the school at the head teacher's discretion, but it will not be compulsory. It's not expected that it will be any harder or easier in any of the schools to achieve a particular grade this year compared to previous years. Whilst the overarching expectation is to fulfil the requirements of the exam board, the schools have the ability to provide the evidence for the exam grades based on their own school context, and in this way they should not be disadvantaged.
Do you wish to ask a supplement question, Councillor Hannah Chowdhury?
Yes, I would like to ask a supplementary. It is, could the Cabinet member please advise us on the quality assurance process specifically how it seeks to ensure that we do not have a repeat of last year's unfair and unjust grading system.
I call upon the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People to reply again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, for your supplementary. This year, exam boards will work together as far as possible to ensure that requirements for internal and external quality assurances are consistent. Internal quality assurance arrangements will include consideration of the school's profile of results from previous years, but unlike last year, this will only be used for internal processes as a way of benchmarking so that schools can check that their judgments are not unduly harsh or lenient. All grades submitted by schools will only be processed after the external quality assurance process has been conducted and the exam board is satisfied with the process. The exam board will put in place arrangements for external quality assurance to check each school's internal processes and in a sample of schools to review the evidence for one or more subjects. This sampling should be both random and risk-based. Exam boards will require all schools to submit a declaration by the head teacher confirming the requirements for internal quality assurance.
Your time is up.
Yeah. I've finished, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I now call upon Councillor Jones to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Community Safety. Please can the Cabinet Member inform us on what is being done to tackle crime in and around the Ilford area?
I call upon the Cabinet Member for Crime, Safety and Community Cohesion to reply, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor Jones for his question on this important matter. Ilford Town Centre is one of the 5 agreed priority areas of the multi-agency Safer Redbridge strategy, so it benefits from a focus across multiple organisations and agencies. The Council has invested heavily in our multi-agency tasking team, currently made up of 11 police officers, 5 Redbridge enforcement officers. It also has had a recent temporary uplift of an additional 5 police officers. The focus of the team working in Ilford Town Centre has been violent crime, robbery, drug dealing and antisocial behaviour, including aggressive and organised begging. This focus allows us to tackle serious offenders as well as minor antisocial behaviour issues which impact the quality of life for local residents and shoppers. Our partners in the police have brought in additional central teams to support activities in Ilford Town Centre and to target specific issues. These teams include the Violent Crimes Task Force, Territorial Support Group and Specialist Crime Groups. Many members and residents would have noticed the recent patrols in the town centre conducted by mounted police on horses, the Road Crimes Team, police dogs and the British Transport Police. I will continue working with ward members and our partners in the police to ensure Redbridge receives as many police resources as possible. Targeted operations have been undertaken to deal with individuals suspected of involvement with gangs and the sale of drugs. Between January and February this year, a targeted policing operation in the town centre resulted in 57 arrests, 326 stop and searches and 101 fixed penalty notices being issued. After I became Cabinet Member for Crime and Safety, I announced the start of Operation Raptor, a joint operation to tackle organised begging gangs who blight our streets and con our residents. Our officers have been busy issuing community protection warnings and notices to known organised beggars, and working with our partners in the police and neighbouring boroughs, we will seek to prosecute and remove these individuals. We have also renewed the Ilford Town Centre Public Space Protection Order, which runs until May 2023. We have given our police
Just conclude. Councillor John, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask what work is being done on intervention schemes to steer people at risk of offending away from crime in order to improve outcomes of these young people so we can keep our communities safe.
I call upon the Cabinet Member for Crime, Safety and Community Cohesion to reply again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In Redbridge, we have adopted the public health approach, which is often referred to as the Glasgow model. This focuses on the root causes of crime and violence. This approach has advised our response and influenced the various projects that have been commissioned. These include Box Up Crime and Lifeline, which provide our young people with positive activities and role models whilst building their confidence. We commission external mentors with lived experience in gangs through an organisation called Grand Force. Our family therapy project are carrying out a pilot using qualified therapists. The Family Intervention Service is an early intervention service that provides wider support to the whole family. Our police partners are carrying out a rolling programme of support and training for parents to build awareness around gangs and exploitation. Our youth offending team continue to work with those young people who have actually been sanctioned through the court service. These are just a few of the programmes being run by this Labour Council to tackle and prevent serious youth violence. There are many more things to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now I call upon Councillor Saima Amin to ask her question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I have a question for the Cabinet Member of Finance and Leisure and Culture. Could the Cabinet Member tell us about the economic recovery plans of the Council post-COVID and recession as well as Brexit?
I call upon the Cabinet Member for Finance, Leisure and Culture to reply, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ahmed, for your question. Over the last 12 months, the COVID pandemic has negatively impacted our local economy, as everybody knows. It's causing hardship for many businesses and residents, and many businesses have had to temporarily close and have seen a reduction in customers and trading, resulting in reduced income and some closed permanently. Unemployment has risen and universal credit benefit claims have tripled over the last year. And during this time, the Council has provided a wide range of support. We've awarded over £60 million in government grants to local businesses and helped over 1,800 businesses to access support to help them recover, adapt and develop, and supported almost 200 vulnerable people into employment. The Council continues to work closely with business and community partners in investing in a recovery programme to support communities and local economy. Our recovery programme will be including 1.6 million over 3 years in our Work Redbridge service to provide intensive employment advice and support to help them into work and improving skills, support our local businesses by investing 600,000 into a business recovery programme to help our local businesses access the help they need to recover, adapt and change the way of doing business, and to support our high streets and town centres. We've secured £500,000 from the GLA to further boost regeneration in Ilford Town Centre and another 270,000 of external funding to support businesses and the safe reopening of our high streets. We've also invested 250,000 in our High Street Improvement Fund for our district centres, which will enable businesses to upgrade premises and improve the attractiveness of the properties and adapt premises to trading environments. And lastly, we're also investing £2.5 million to develop flexible and affordable workspaces in Queen Victoria House in Barkingside, which will create at least 38 business workspace units and which will be managed by our workspace provider and offer business support, training and networking opportunities and provision of a dedicated business and enterprise hub.
Thank you. Do you wish to ask a supplement question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
30 minutes for council questions dissolve.
Shall I ask the supplementary? Or no?
No, I'm afraid the
Okay.
time is up now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Roy.
The 30 minutes permitted for the councillors to ask questions as set out in Standing Order 17.2 has expired. In accordance with the Standing Order 17.15, the question not reached will receive a written reply within 10 clear working days. We will now move to agenda item number 13. Agenda item 13 is matters called in by members in accordance with Standing Order 54.
Mr. Mayor, there are no such reports.
Thank you. Agenda item number 14, business motions. Shall I read that, Fiona? Fiona?
So, Mr. Mayor, there are 3 business motions.
Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to declare an interest on any of the 3 motions? raise your hand. Yeah. Councillor Joe Hare, could you please declare your interest?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm declaring an interest because my wife works as an implementation manager for West Essex PCT. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's in relation to the first motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beverly Brewer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm declaring an interest because my husband works for South West London and St George's NHS Trust.
Thank you. Councillor Jamaluddin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to declare that my daughter works for NHS, Queen's Hospital, and I think it relates to the motion, so I'd like to declare that.
Thank you. Councillor Wasey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My wife is a doctor at Homerton Hospital.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have family members and close friends who work in frontline NHS roles.
Thank you. Any more, please? I can't see any more hands, so that must be. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Mayor, can I just confirm that those who have declared an interest will not be able to take part in the motion and will not be able to vote? Can you confirm that, please?
Yes, that's correct, Leader. They will not be able to vote on those motions.
Thank you.
And now I call upon the Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Services to move the motion about funding for National Health Service Heroes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And when I was thinking about what I was going to say in supporting this motion this evening, I saw a quote from a nurse called Sandy Gill in the Nursing Times, and Sandy said, "Nurses once again rose to the challenge and conquered. This storm will pass, but there will always be another waiting, and surely we'll all be there at the front, ready to go all over again, no questions asked. That is what makes nurses and nursing so unique." And then I remembered, Mr. Mayor, I remembered them standing on the doors, on their doorsteps. I remember the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, standing on their doorsteps and applauding for our healthcare workers. Little did I know at that time, little did I know, Mr. Mayor, at that time, that clapping would be hollow. It would not be authentic. It would be the worst of virtue signalling, because this government, this Tory government, would go on to fail our healthcare workers, fail to give a just reward and recognition for the sacrifices and the sacrifice they have made in the fight against COVID. And our healthcare workers in the NHS have made a great sacrifice, Mr. Mayor. They have worked long and grueling hours. They've had to navigate, at times, limited access to PPE. Some have even had to leave their families, leave their homes to protect people back in their families back in their homes from COVID, to be able to go in to work. They've lost colleagues, Mr. Mayor. They've nursed our loved ones, and they've nursed our loved ones in the last hours and minutes of their lives. They've witnessed tragedies. They've witnessed tragedies and horrors that no one should have to endure, Mr. Mayor. Our healthcare workers in the NHS deserve a just reward and recognition for that work they have done in the fight against COVID. And this Tory government has failed them, Mr. Mayor, failed them. They say, the Tories say, We can't afford it. But they can afford £37 billion for a failed test and trace system that only works, Mr. Mayor, that only worked when local government got involved. They say, the Tory government say, that we cannot afford this, Mr. Mayor, but they're paying consultants in that failed test and trace system between £6,000 and £7,000 a day. Just imagine it, £6,000 and £7,000 a day for failure. What a sign, what a signal to those who've working at the COVID front line. They say we can't afford it, Mr. Mayor. The Tory government say we can't afford it, but they still found the money to give a pay bump to Dominic Cummings. And his greatest contribution to the pandemic was breaking the public trust in government guidance. They say we can't afford it, Mr. Mayor. This Tory government say we can't afford it, and they spend millions and millions of pounds on PPE, using the best language I can use in polite company is untransparent procurement processes, and substantial amounts of it is unusable. It's like, Mr. Mayor, it's like the government are treating the citizens of this nation as a dodgy ATM, that if you were a healthcare worker and you go up to that ATM, nothing comes out. But if you are a Tory friend of the Tory party, a Tory party crony, you tap in those buttons and millions of pounds come out. If ever I was going to accuse someone of lining their pockets, it's those Tory party cronies that have profited on a national tragedy. Mr. Mayor, our nurses, our healthcare workers deserve a just reward and recognition, and that is why I and the Labour Party in Redbridge are supporting this motion. I so move.
I call upon Councillor Garfield to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I reserve my right to speak, please?
Thank you. I'll open up for the debate now. Please raise your hand if you wish to take part in the debate. Okay, I've got Councillor Khalid Noor.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I fully support the motion as moved by the Cabinet Member for Adult and Social Care and Health, Councillor Mark Santos. I fully support this, that our NHS heroes, hardworking health and social care staff deserve to be recognized and rewarded appropriately for their dedication to keep us all safe during this pandemic. Mr. Mayor, Conservative government's offer of just £1 increase for more than 1 million NHS staff is an insult to our NHS doctors, nurses and support workers who risk their lives to treat and provide care to people from our communities. There is no doubt that this offer is disgraceful, disrespectful and grossly unfair. I welcome this council intentions to condemn the government's offer and to ask them to reconsider their shameful gesture and do the right thing, to reward NHS workers with an appropriate pay rise. And I echo that condemnation and that request. A decent offer would be a real show of solidarity and appreciation for the sacrifice of NHS workers. It would be only boost their morale, but it also send a signal that we care about them and their families as they care for us and our families. It would show that we value their work. Mr. Mayor, in response to the offer of a £1 increase, General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing said, "This is a pitiful and bitterly disappointing. The government is dangerously out of touch with the nursing staff, NHS workers and public." She said that if the review body accepted the government's plan, it would amount to an experienced nurses receiving an increase just 3.50 a week in their real take-home pay. This offer is a real-term pay cut because it doesn't keep up the inflation. The government is sneaky. It is pointing out that inflation is low at the moment, but NHS workers have experienced over 10 years of pay restraint. A 1% increase this year would still leave nurses, for example, earning £2,500 less than they were at the start of Conservative rules 10 years ago, as the motion stated. Mr. Mayor, while coronavirus doesn't discriminate in infection of people here in the UK, it is evident that coronavirus disproportionately affected Black and minority ethnic communities, including NHS employees, health and care staff. It is reported that 63% of the first 106 health and social care staff are known to have died from the virus, or the Black or Asian. The death rate among British Black Africans and British Pakistanis from coronavirus in English hospitals is more than 2.5 times that of the British white population. And the older Bangladeshi appears vulnerable on the basis of the underlying health condition. Mortality data has shown that COVID-related deaths have been higher among those living in deprived areas, where people from Black and minority ethnic communities are more likely to live. The virus has exposed the inequality which were present in our society before this pandemic hit us. It seems that Conservative government, with its poultry price, want those inequalities to continue. I am glad that Council does not, and that we shall, with our MPs, stand up for all the people in this borough to be treated fairly. Mr. Mayor, so tonight, by supporting this motion, I join with the Council's protest alongside my fellow Labour elected representative against the government proposal £1 rise for NHS staff. I challenge the Conservative members present tonight to support this motion too, to whom they are accountable. Will they raise their hand to support the indefensible actions of their party government, or they will stand up for the residents of this borough, those who work in NHS and who use its services? Whichever it is, whichever side Conservative councillors are on when it comes to the board, I am sure that, and I am sure that people of this borough will remember. Mr. Mayor, I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Neil Zammit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've edited my speech just to take account of the previous speakers and to save a bit of time. And I want to add my voice to those who are frankly disgusted with the government's initial pay offer to nurses, which comes against a background of growing unrest in the profession and strong public support for strike action. The Zavanta Comrades survey for the Independent finding 53% of the public in favour and only 28% in opposition to industrial action. I fully understand that the pay body will report in early May, and that the government will be taking their findings into account before making a final offer. But as Dame Donna Kinnear, who's already been quoted, the RCN's chief executive, has said, ministers are out of touch with public backing for better rewards for nursing. So much so, in fact, that Helen Whatley, the care minister, is on record as saying, and I quote, "The thing which is most often mentioned to me is staff want more colleagues." And further, NHS workers wanted to feel genuinely supported and valued in their work. Well, it's a bit hard to see how a derisory 1% pay offer genuinely values our nurses, particularly as Scotland, the place where we know good things happen, is offering 4% in recognition of their service and dedication, plus a £500 thank you bonus. As they say, words are cheap. In common with earlier speakers, I think the abiding image for me was the sight of a very sick Prime Minister standing outside number 10, applauding nurses just before he was admitted to St Thomas's. I applauded as well, along with most of the nation, but I can remember at the time thinking of the pay award and seeing it as an acid test of commitment to the profession. Well, they failed it, didn't they? And when the chips were down, the government could not put their hands in their collective pockets. The difficulties they now face is that whatever decision is made as a result of the pay review body's findings, the confidence of the profession would have been lost at a time when we desperately need their morale to be high as we wait for the third wave, which is currently sweeping through much of Europe. Nurses, as we've heard, have borne the brunt. It was 110% effort for what is being offered as a measly 1% in return. I'd just like to close by personally thanking nurses who work at our two local trusts, Barts Health and BHR, and in particular Tony Chambers, the interim chief executive of BHR, who is a nurse himself, for his concentration on staff stories in his weekly report, which I'm sure will have helped lift nursing morale. So well done, Tony. I will be supporting this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now go to Councillor Anita Boateng. Anita, can you hear me? Councillor Anita Boateng?
Sorry, I had a technical difficulty, but can I be heard, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and apologies. So I first want to start by taking this moment to recognise the enormous sacrifice, grit and determination that nurses and frontline NHS staff have exhibited to save thousands of lives in this country. And I support a pay rise. I mean, not of this kind, but something like a bonus for frontline NHS staff in recognition of their incredible service would be wonderful. And obviously ministers will be making their final decision in May after the independent panel makes its own recommendation. And I'm sure the government will be weighing all of this up. The first thing I want to say is that the Conservative Party believes so much in the NHS that we've funded it properly. It's had the biggest cash boost in history for the NHS, and that's been enshrined into law. The Conservatives have invested nearly 40 billion in frontline services every year by 2023 to 24, and are building 40 new hospitals. I mean, we have a councillor of ours, Councillor Jafel, who's on the front line delivering vaccines. You know, this really matters. But my question to the chamber, Mr. Mayor, is whether I've confused this for a student debating chamber, because residents have just given millions of pounds of their hard-earned money to this council, and it's just slightly odd that that money should be spent on Labour councillors' salaries who voted against even a modest cut in those salaries, to spend the entire time talking about an issue that they have no control over. I know Councillor Santos is not so green as to believe that a letter from Councillor Atwell to Conservative government ministers, which ones I have no idea, will make a shred of difference to what happens with the Independent Pay Commission. So what is this about, Mr. Mayor? I see it clearly as an attempt to gain some electoral traction for their candidate for local assembly elections. And I think that's actually quite disrespectful to the people of Redbridge to be using this chamber and councillors' taxpayers' money to that end. So what I would like to do, Mr. Mayor, is give residents the respect they deserve by urging the councils opposite to do better at the things that they do have control over. So, for instance, we've heard from Matthew tonight about the Fairlock Outdoor Activity Centre. He could reverse the £90,000 of cuts to the Fairlock Outdoor Activity Centre. Councils opposite could scrap the new paid positions that have been created to extend powers of patronage and stop lining their pockets. Councillor Atwell could provide bigger recycling boxes and listen to residents who are struggling with the current wheelie bin rollout. He could make streets safer after the devastating stabbing of a 15-year-old boy in Clay Hall this week.
Councillor Boateng, could you please just speak on the motion itself, please?
Yes. So Mr. Mayor, I am, because I think that what we should be doing is giving a bigger voice to residents to listen and engage with the concerns they have raised, rather than putting down motions about Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings is not listening to this debate. Redbridge residents are, and they want you to talk about issues that matter to them. We will not be playing this game. We will be
Thank you very much. If you haven't got anything else to say on the motion, then thank you very much. Yeah?
Thank you. I just want to finish a sentence, Mr. Mayor. My message to the councillors opposite is very clear. Do your day job. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. May I ask Councillor Attwater next? Councillor Jazz Attwater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unbelievable sort of rant that we've just heard. It's unbelievable. We're talking about the heroes who have saved this country, and suddenly the deflection tactics by Councillor Boateng was so embarrassing, had to be stopped 3 times by the Mayor to speak on the motion. That's what happens when you have nothing to say, nothing to help those heroes on the front line, and all you want to do is play party politics. Mr. Mayor, I support this motion. Certainly, in terms of, I'm proud to support this motion tonight, supporting our NHS in their fight for a fair wage. Over the past year, our NHS workers have endured unimaginable work conditions. Last spring, we saw shocking photos of nurses and doctors wearing, literally bin bags to protect themselves from COVID-19. We saw pictures online of NHS staff exhausted with red rings around their mouths and noses from wearing masks for 12-hour shifts. We saw the result of the hard work, family members reunited, people brought back from the brink, lives saved. Mr. Mayor, many of us joined our neighbours on our doorsteps and we clapped for the NHS. Children across Redbridge displayed rainbows in their windows, thanking all our frontline heroes. We were grateful. We remain grateful. Through the pandemic, many of us have lost family members, family friends, colleagues to the deadly virus. Loss is devastating. Grief can be all-consuming, Mr. Mayor. But through the pain and devastation, our NHS workers carried on. They got up each day risking their lives to save our families. I have long admired the NHS. My own daughter is training to be a doctor, but I am so proud of her. But over this past year, admiration just does not cover how I feel about our NHS, how I'm sure many of us feel. When a global pandemic ripped through our country, our lives were completely upended. And so many of us immediately became completely dependent on the kindness of strangers, on the kindness, the commitment and the care of our nurses and doctors, the NHS staff. They became the heroes to us because they saved so many of us. Now the time has come to thank them properly, to stop using words when it's time for action. Instead, after a year of doorstep clapping, of calling them our NHS heroes, the government has completely let them down, offering an insulting 1% pay rise to over 1 million NHS staff after the year, where they saved all of us. Is not just misguided, it's downright shameful. When adjusted for inflation, the pay rise means the nurses will this year, in the second year of a global pandemic, will effectively be paid £2,500 less than they were 10 years ago. That's the real sort of crux of this problem. I cannot fathom how that can be considered the right thing to do. I cannot consider what that's got to do with the Fairlop Outdoor Activity Centre. Our heroes deserve better than the 1%, which is effectively a pay cut. We believe in fair wages for hard work, and we believe in the government must prioritise our NHS. Having endured a decade of government funding cuts, I know only too well how hard it is to balance a budget. However, I also know that when you follow the money, you find out what truly matters to those in charge. In the case of Redbridge, you'd find our green flag parks, our refurbished libraries, our award-winning adult social care services. In the case of this Conservative government, you'll find pay rises for cronies like Dominic Cummings. I will mention him. Billions handed over to private companies for failed projects like the Not Fit for Purpose Track and Trace programme. And perhaps the most astonishing, in the middle of a global pandemic, you'll find millions wasted on vanity projects like the American-style media centre and the Situation Room. The money is there when Matt Hancock's friends down the pub want the government contract. The money is there when Boris Johnson wants to play at being president behind a podium. But when our heroes, our NHS workers, are crying out for our support, this Conservative government suddenly pulls the purse strings shut. I'm proud to support this motion because I'm proud of our NHS. I believe they deserve a pay rise. And I believe everybody tonight should be voting for this motion. And I hope they do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Paul Donovan next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 1% submission relating to NHS staff is frankly derisory, betraying a government that knows the price of everything and the value of nothing or no one. Many will remember coming out onto the doorsteps to clap our NHS and care staff week after week as the pandemic spread, taking ever more lives. These people risk their lives to go into work day in, day out. One recently described these horrific times as work, sleep, eat and back again. At the time, the public clapped whilst the government failed to provide adequate personal protective equipment. The Prime Minister himself went down with COVID, coming out full of praise for the NHS when he finally recovered. So how do you get from that position to a 1% pay offer? It says we'll clap you but not pay you. The insult of this pay offer deepens when other factors like the money squandered on consultants, some paid £6,000 a day, and the track and trace debacle are taken into account. Track and trace has cost £37 billion to fund, and as one senior member of the Royal College of Nursing recently noticed, it was nurses who had to help out in the early days due to the lack of know-how amongst those contracted to do the work. The government refused to run track and trace through the health and local authority networks, despite constant calls from local government and health chiefs. When they did use these networks to implement the fantastic vaccination programme, it showed what might have been. Sadly, the contrast between the funding provided to private companies to provide track and trace compared to the derisory pay submission for NHS staff proves the old Tory Thatcherite mantra of private good, public bad still reigns. And it really is quite squalid. And there are those in government who always, no matter what the crisis, see it only in terms of a profit opportunity. Please support this motion. Don't just clap our fantastic NHS staff, pay them properly.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Burley next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no doubt that the country owes a huge debt of gratitude to everyone involved in the National Health Service. And we don't believe anyone begrudges national health workers a fair pay increase and a decent bonus for what's happened in the past year. But we find it incredible that the Labour Party are debating this before any pay award has been decided by the independent pay review body. And of course, Mr. Mayor, any pay increase will be backdated. Mr. Mayor, the appalling language of this motion shows Redbridge residents that this is clearly a party political motion designed by the Labour Party at national and local level to try and squirm a few votes. But judging by the latest national opinion polls, it is not working. As the public are clever and understand the truth about how the Labour Party operates nationally and locally. Mr. Mayor, it is important to put into context that no other public sector pay worker is receiving a pay rise this year. And many, of course, have had difficult times. But for many people working in the private sector of the economy, they have lost their jobs or have reduced salaries, and through no fault of their own. It is also important, Mr. Mayor, to note that newly qualified nurses have received a 12% pay increase over the past 3 years, and the average nurse's pay, and rightly so, is £34,000 per year. Mr. Mayor, a year ago this week, we were looking into the face of a global pandemic with no idea of what the cost would be in terms of life and the damage to the economy and people's livelihoods. And today, hopefully, we are coming out of the tail end of this horrendous pandemic, thanks to our world-leading vaccine rollout, where more than 50% of the adult population have had the vaccine. And the government's priority must now be to protect people's livelihoods and keep people in work, because without a strong economy and because without people in work,
without the business grants and without protecting employers, there will be no funding for the NHS. We therefore need a strong economy to protect the NHS, and this is what Labour will never, ever understand. Mr Mayor, this past year was about saving lives. The next year has to be about keeping the economy stable and saving the economy, which is the best way to protect the NHS. So, Mr Mayor, I say that Redbridge residents will see this business motion as clearly premature, as no pay decision has yet been made by the independent pay review. So what Councillor Santos should have done, instead of playing his petty party politics, is come to the Conservative group and we would have worked on a properly worded motion for the pay review body to consider. A cross-party motion, Mr Mayor, will always be much stronger. And finally, Mr Mayor, what Councillor Santos fails to understand is that the 1% pay rise is not set in stone. What is set in stone is how the Labour Party play party politics with the NHS and play party politics with our brilliant NHS staff, who deserve better than this poorly worded political motion. So, Mr Mayor, the NHS have done our country proud this past year, and NHS staff will be treated fairly by the independent pay review body in May. And this miserable, moaning letter will have no effect whatsoever. Concentrate on local affairs, Councillor Atwell. Stop these stupid letters and let's really get to the business of what's happening locally.
Mr Mayor, if I registered to speak, because I'm waiting to speak, and it seems to be the same people that get the speaking, and have I in fact asked to speak?
Yes, I've got your name
thank you very
on
much.
the list. You are the next one. You'll be the last.
How exciting! Good.
I'm also
very
waiting to speak, Councillor Stark. Thank you.
Yes, but you've already had to go, Councillor Nolan.
I know, but I would like to have another go.
I'm looking forward to it.
Mr Mayor,
quite
I
pleased
think
because
I'm
I've got,
misdeclaring an interest.
Order.
I've got another two motions after that. We can't spend too much time on one.
No, I know, but that's why I'm waiting for my chance.
I think I should declare an interest, Mr Mayor, and I haven't done so.
Okay, no problem. You can do that, yeah?
Okay, my daughter-in-law is a consultant doctor at Barnet General.
Okay, that's fine, yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, I think because of the time limitation tonight, I've got another two motions. I'll rather go on now. I'll go on to Councillor Garfield, who has reserved the right to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And I'm really pleased to support this motion, to second this motion. I'm shocked and stunned by the tirade we've heard from the opposition benches. I'm absolutely astounded. I'm not usually lost for words, but I feel like I am lost for words when you're saying that we are not supporting local people, we're not dealing with local issues, we're ignoring our residents. Our local hospitals employ 7,500 staff, the majority of whom are local. Thousands of Redbridge residents are employed as NHS staff, nurses, doctors in our local hospitals. This Labour Council is speaking up for our residents. Also, you know, you talked about the cash boost for the NHS. The biggest cash boost in the NHS was promised by Labour in 2019 manifesto, 26 billion. This government has delivered less than 6 billion. Again, broken promises. And we need to say that we are standing up for our residents. We are standing up for our residents who have worked tirelessly to keep us safe. We've all heard the stories of what the NHS has done for us over this past year, and how can we actually treat them like this? It's absolutely appalling. And to be told that we are playing, you know, with student politics, that's just absolutely outrageous. And I urge you, your friends in Westminster, your Prime Minister, your mate Boris, talk to him. If you don't think this has actually been decided, do something about it. Isn't it about time you did something for local residents? You know, valuing our health and social care staff and investing in the NHS is a political choice. And it's one that Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have chosen not to make. As Councillor Santos said, their clapping has been meaningless. The National Health staff and their contribution this year has been, as we've heard, unbelievable. Many of them have also lost their lives. Many have saved our lives, our friends, our families, our aunties, our uncles, our fathers, our mothers, our grandparents, our neighbours, and many in our community. They've gone above and beyond. They've worked hours to look after our loved ones and are now vaccinating us all. And we've seen the pictures, you know, we've seen the pictures, and we're seeing how some of them are still suffering from what they've been through over the past year, and that's going to go on for a while. The proposal that the government has, the promise again, has broken another promise of the government. The government promised last year to give them the national health workers a 2.1% promise. So another promise by the Tories broken. At the start of this pandemic, we had 40,000 shortage of staff in the National Health Service, and people stepped up, and they should now be acknowledged for that. They stepped up, they filled the gaps, those that were retired, students, those who chose to leave because the pay wasn't enough, decided to come back, and this is how this government treats them. Nurses still have to go to food banks, and it's appalling that with this 1%, they're going to have to do that again. It's an absolute shame on this government. We now know inflation's at 2%. However, we can't even give our nurses 2%. Last week, the government agreed. You know, you talk about not having any money and what the pandemic has cost us, and we know that as a council how much it's cost us. And we were told by the government we were going to get all this money back, which of course we haven't. But you know, you'll moan about there's not enough money. But last week, the government agreed 6.6 billion to build faster missiles, stockpiling lethal weapons, but yet giving our National Health staff a pay rise they just won't do. 6.6 billion they agreed. Now, if they gave our National Health Service a 12.5% increase, that would cost 4.25 billion. So please on that side of the bench, do the maths. What makes more sense? This 1%, £3.50 a week, that would just about pay for a meal deal. Can you believe that? That's what we're giving our NHS workers. And you talk about, yes, nurses' pay has increased. But for example, porters who don't just transfer patients, they move beds around, they transfer equipment, they collect blood from blood banks, they take these to the ward, they change gas cylinders on resuscitation. They do so much work. And what do they get paid? £12,500 a year. That's really not enough to live on. And it's the same with cleaners. So look at the cleaners, we're paying them 12,500, 13,000 a year. So that 1%, that's just an insult to them. I'm really pleased and proud to support this motion, and I'm ashamed that the Tories sitting opposite us aren't supporting this too. Shame on you. Thank you very much, Councillor Santos, for bringing this motion to the Chamber. I support it 100%. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Mayor. I would have liked to have said something. I'm sure other people would, but we've had the same. Just had a political broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party. We've nearly had one on behalf of the Conservative Party as well. It would have been nice of us if some of us had some points to make.
Mr. Mayor, a point of order. What is Mr. Councillor Stark going on about? This is a debate.
And you're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask the Cabinet Member, Councillor Santos, to reply to the motion, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just start by saying Councillor Boateng's absolutely right. I'm not green. My salad days and all in many ways are very much behind me. And what I would say to her is, Mr. Mayor, and to other Conservatives in relation to this motion, that we are doing our day job by representing our residents. Healthcare workers are our residents. I'm sure Councillor Boateng and others in the Conservative Party, I would have hoped, have read the recent white paper, which makes us a real stakeholder within integrated care systems within the NHS. Why is this not our business? And actually, when residents are concerned about the NHS, where do they turn to? They turn to us. They turn to us for their support and for our advocacy and for our ability to raise issues loud and clear. And the days, Mr. Mayor, when you can paint yourself orange and bring out a Sharpie and revise facts are over. He lost in the US, Mr. Mayor, and you should stop. The Conservatives should stop doing that here. Since 2010, 11 nurse starters received a 10% reduction in real terms. There is evidence of real terms cuts across all wage bands for nurses. The Health Foundation said that NHS wages were £600 per employee lower in real terms at the start of the pandemic than in 2011-12. And actually, as for this nonsense about Conservatives' investment in the NHS, my goodness, history didn't start in 2019 or 2017. It started for the NHS under Labour administrations when you had 5.6% year-on-year growth. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to conclude with a quote from Martin Luther King. He said, "All labour that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence." Our healthcare workers have uplifted humanity over this year, have increased dignity and done it with painstaking excellence. They deserve a just reward and recognition, and I support and I move this motion. Thank you very much.
The substantive motion will now be put to the vote. Can I ask to raise your electronic hand if you're voting against the motion? I can't see anyone voting against. Anyone abstaining?
Sit on the fence.
Mr. Mayor, there are 9 councillors abstaining.
9 councillors have abstained, and the motion is agreed.
Mr. Mayor, when you do your numbers, just don't forget that I was silenced because of the hard work my wife does in the NHS. So I'm not voting for it, but I haven't raised a hand because I've been prevented from voting.
9 people have abstained. 9. Is that clear, Councillor Bassett?
I understand the number of abstentions. I'm just saying I do not want to be included. Well, I can't be included because you've silenced me and prevented me from voting in any which way because of the work my wife does for the NHS. So, don't count me as a vote for.
Well, I'm afraid that's the rule. So, you all got to abide the same rule. Thank you.
On a point of information, Mr. Mayor, is Councillor Vasey even abstaining? Surely he's entering the debate which he has excluded himself for because he could possibly be in charge of a direct pecuniary interest.
No, he didn't. He abstained. Yeah? He didn't abstain. He did vote.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. If he's excluded from the votes, no vote is recorded, sir. No vote is recorded. I'm sure Miss Alderman will confirm that.
All right, we can look it up the result later. But 9 people abstained for the record. Yeah, today. Thank you. We'll move on to the next day. I call upon the one second. The motion has been agreed. The second motion is I call upon Councillor Mrs. Clark to move the motion. Isn't it? Oh, my apology, I couldn't see that. I call upon the leader of the council, Councillor Atwal, to move the second motion about adequate and fair government funding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move this motion, sir, to fight on behalf of local people for better funding to protect valued services from the government cuts, from the Conservative government cuts. Over the last 10 years, Mr. Mayor, successive governments have absolutely gutted local government. Each and every year, funding is reduced, grants are taken away, costs are piled on. Bit by bit, services are eroded, support is reduced, and local people are made to suffer. It is clear that local government is not a priority for this Conservative government. It is clear that local people are not a priority for this Conservative government. In Redbridge alone, we have lost almost £200 million over 10 years. That's 63% of our funding which directly supports services local people rely on, has been taken away from us. Despite these unparalleled cuts, we have successfully built the first council homes in over a decade, built 2 new leisure centres with our most deprived wards, with another being built in Wanstead as we speak. We've kept every single library open with plans to build 5 more across the borough, opened 2 new rough sleeping shelters, became a living wage council, brought waste collections in-house, planted over 40,000 trees in the last 18 months alone, plus a mini forest in Seven Kings. Kept weekly bin collections, achieved outstanding reports from Ofsted for our children's services, Mr. Mayor. We achieved an excellent rating for our adult social care, invested 1.6 million in our playgrounds and outdoor gyms. We set up a climate emergency panel to tackle the climate crisis, achieved green flag status for 9 of our local parks, rolled out CCTV and ANPR cameras, reducing crime across the borough, and brought first-class athletics and Woodford Town Football Club back home in style with a brand new stadium. Can you even begin to imagine what this administration could have achieved with an additional £200 million every single year? We've achieved so much because we care about our neighbours, we care about our communities, and we care about the services that really matter to our residents. Whether it be retaining weekly waste collections or our award-winning adult social care, we have had to be innovative and resourceful, but we have managed to save services where in other boroughs they have fallen away. Despite our hard work, despite retaining and reinvigorating services, and despite being rated one of the most cost-effective councils in the country, this Conservative government continues to punish us. Perhaps because Redbridge is not a home to a cabinet minister like Richmondshire. Perhaps because the vast majority of Redbridge isn't represented by a Conservative MP like Rosendale. Perhaps because Redbridge isn't a Tory target like Canterbury. The most recent round of government funding allocation are the worst example of barefaced pork barrel politics perpetrated by this shameless Conservative government, Mr. Mayor. Redbridge has been placed lower down on the Levelling Up Fund allocation than leafy Stratford upon Avon. It is a disgrace. Throughout the pandemic, this council has stepped up and stepped in where the government has let local people down. We sourced PPE when none came from Westminster, Mr. Mayor. We supplied healthy food for vulnerable children when boxes of processed rubbish arrived from Number 10. We organised local track and trace system and stepped in when the privatised government system wasn't fit for purpose. All the while we were promised our money back. We were told to do whatever it takes, Mr. Mayor, and we did exactly that. Today, all we're asking is that the government to hold up their end of the bargain and properly fund local government, properly fund Redbridge Council, to stop investing to win elections and instead invest to support local people. Redbridge deserves fair funding, and this council will keep fighting for our residents whilst the opposition stays silent. Mr. Mayor, I move this motion. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Wright to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. I'll now open it up for general debate. Can I ask Councillor Vasey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad I'm not excluded from speaking on this one just because my wife happens to work hard in the NHS. But anyway, let's not go to the previous party political motion. Let's talk about the party political motion in front of us. So, dealing with this motion, it's almost like a bit of deja vu. I mean, Elon Musk should, not spend so much money trying to send rockets up into space, because there's an alternative universe right here that we all get to experience every time there's a council meeting. The alternate universe of the Ilford Labour Party and the, what did I describe it as last time, the self-aggrandizing bubble in which you guys inhibit, where the only people who have to make difficult decisions are you guys, that all of the funding that the difficult decisions that have had to be made have all been on you and none of it on the government, and what they've had to do to deal with this pandemic. Local government has had a difficult time over the past decade. No one is pretending that. The Labour Party left such a mess when it left office in 2010. It took years to fix that. Those 63% cuts are on you and Gordon Brown, who I presume that most of you voted for. That's where that blame lies. Now, when we were getting back to the economy being on track, the COVID pandemic happened. No one can deny the damage that lockdown has done to our economy, will continue to do to our economy for a long, long time. This council has lost touch with reality. Last time I talked about how you were slapping people who were suffering because of furloughs and because of uncertainty over their jobs with council tax rises. That's on you guys, and the decisions that you make, forcing everybody to have a wheelie bin, regardless of whether or not they've got a wheelie bin. A wheelie bin is a wheelie bin. Surely if they've already got one, you don't need to pay for another one. But the council wants to force a wheelie bin on everybody. This is a council which has no touch with what is going on in the real world. You come here with party political debated motions that do belong in a sixth form debate in society. When I mentioned the first motion to my wife, she was like, oh, that old chestnut. Oh, they're using us as a prop again, are them? You should mention difficult time for all of us. Difficult decisions have to be made, and when I look at what you put onto residents with the council tax, and I look at the decisions that have been made, this is not a council that is making the right decisions for its residents. We didn't really get to all of the questions. My question returning again to the cash cow cameras, where people are squeezed in my ward for driving through their own area. More money you guys squeeze out of the people. You're already squeezing it. Where are you spending it? Well, you're not spending it in Churchfield, you're spending it in Ilford. This is a party which Ilford is the priority of this council. This is the Ilford Labour Party. You run the council for the benefit of Ilford. That's where you spend the money. And let us be really honest with ourselves. Things are going to be difficult for the next few years. The council is going to have to make tough decisions. The government is going to have to make tough decisions. But it is only by getting the economy back on track and getting people back out working again that we are going to be in a situation where we can once again have the funds to do all of the things that we want to do, like the ones we've discussed. And I think that all of us on the Conservative side, and I think most voters would agree that the Conservative Party does value the NHS. And Councillor Garfield talked about the promised funding for the NHS in the 2019 election. Do I need to remind you how that election went, and also where you guys are in the polls? Whenever the Labour Party is behind in the polls, you fall back on the same old stuff going round and round and round, and that's what you're doing tonight. This is not going to make a decision lives better for residents. This is the Labour Party grubbing for votes because you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh, we've got to give a bit of a push to our candidate for the London Assembly election. So I see that the bell has gone, so I will draw it there. You guys know in your heart of hearts, this is not the council that's run as well that it could be. Those of you who don't represent wards in Ilford know where the priority of this council lies, the money they lavish upon in the capital projects on Ilford. You know about what it's about. So I always like to, to sort of chirp up on these meetings, to give some home truths to the Labour Party and try and just burst that self-aggrandising bubble which you guys seem to inhabit. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Joe Blackman next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak in favour of the motion this evening. There's no getting away from the fact that the Redbridge residents have suffered at the hands of this Tory government. Funding formulas that penalise us, brutal years of austerity and short-termism have all taken their toll. And now we face further uncertainties with continued challenges of responding to the pandemic and economic pressures. We've seen cuts to our council budget of 198 million since 2010. Let me just say that again, that's 198 million since 2010. Across London, there's been an average cut in funding of 63%. That's an incredible amount for one council to absorb. And in terms of the record of the last Labour government, I'm proud of their commitment to public services, which I saw benefit communities across the country. And I think this government has a lot to learn from them. Anyway, moving on. Despite the cuts that we are currently and have been experiencing at the hands of this Conservative government, it's thanks to the leadership of this council and officers that are committed to our residents that we have an impressive record of efficiency and delivery, which I think is recognised by residents wherever they live in the borough, not just in Ilford. I'm particularly proud that we've kept every local library open, including Wanstead Library in the west of the borough, that we've been awarded green flag status for 9 Redbridge parks. We've invested to keep our streets clean. We've protected weekly bin collections, free bulky waste and green garden collections at a time when most London boroughs are reducing their services in these areas. We've been rated outstanding for children's social care. We've opened 2 new leisure centres and more in the pipeline, including in Wanstead in the west of the borough. We've begun building council homes for the first time in a generation. And throughout the pandemic, we stepped up spending on critical services, including food parcels, supporting the care sector, calling older and vulnerable residents, delivering medicine and supporting the NHS to deliver COVID-19 testing and vaccinations. I know this year has been particularly challenging and I want to pay tribute to the staff who've worked so hard in difficult circumstances. Before being elected as a councillor, I knew that council funding from government had been slashed. But what I didn't appreciate was the insecurity caused by the government's chronic short-termism, their failure to provide long-term strategies and funding to address the pressing issues of our time, like adult social care and climate change. So many services now seem reliant on short-term pots of funding for the latest initiative thought up in Whitehall, with inadequate core funding and no clarity on future funding. The challenges this presents to officers to plan, recruit and deliver cannot be underestimated, and I see that firsthand with the current brinkmanship of the government as it prevaricates yet again over TfL funding. This also affects businesses and residents who want to work with us to help transform the borough. Why would you invest and train your staff to deliver new green energy projects or solar panels when the funding is never for more than a year? The government's response to the pandemic has shown that they can mobilise resources when needed, particularly for extortionate consultants and old friends. So now let's provide the sustainable long-term funding that our residents deserve. And let's make sure we don't forget the lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic, that we're all vulnerable when we fail to invest in strong public services, that local government can and does deliver, and that we all need to value our frontline workers and services. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Councillor Morgan Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak in favour of the motion too. Mr. Mayor, as I said at the last Budget Council, there's nothing fair about council tax with its nearly 30-year-old bandings and its regional imbalances across England. So as this motion notes, a government that claims to be funding fairness in funding for local councils must be at the very least wrong-headed to talk about increasing funding when it's actually instructing authorities like ours to increase council tax. It's increasing the burden on our most vulnerable residents, and even then it's not enough to give them the levels of service that they deserve. Mr. Mayor, I didn't come into local government to see the quality and number of services available to the residents of Wanstead Village or anywhere in this borough reduced. But after more than a decade of Conservative austerity, we know that it is harder than ever for this administration to make up for the nearly £200 million we have lost in central government funding. What the opposition seems to ignore every time they talk about the council taking money or making income is that this money is set against the record of cuts to our funding. It's money that stops us ending up like a Conservative authority like Northamptonshire County Council and allows us to deliver the statutory services we're required to, not just by law, but morally. And not just these, but to keep our libraries and leisure centres, our refuse collection and recycling, children's centres and support for other sectors that previous speakers have mentioned. Mr Mayor, it pains me, especially in nearly 3 years into joining this council, that our finances have been so strangled by central government that we're reduced to labelling the costs of adult and children's social care, which we not only legally but morally have to provide, as budgetary overspend year after year. As someone who grew up with a disabled parent dependent on social care, I know that the large sums of money incurred in looking after our most vulnerable residents are more than just figures in our budget papers. They mean companionship, they mean mobility, they mean in so many ways quality of life and freedom for our most vulnerable residents, and it should be not a burden but a privilege for our society and our borough to support these costs. Therefore, Mr Mayor, we need sustainable funding, as Councillor Blackman has said, not just for this year and next year, but well into the future, for social care especially, but ultimately for all of our residents' needs, hopes and desires. Real fairness for local government finances, and I know it's a boring topic to many people outside this chamber, but I've just listed the sort of things that it means people really getting and accessing the things they care about. Fairness in local government finances have been needed every day of the last 11 years, and they are still needed tonight. I urge all members to support the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Can I now call upon Councillor Udin, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, what we have witnessed over the last 12 months is the deepest recession in 300 years. When millions of people are worried about future of their jobs and fund their household bills and foods, the government decided to increase the council tax on our residents. Mr. Mayor, the Prime Minister said he would do whatever is necessary to support the local authorities to provide vital services, but he did not keep his promise. They washed off their hands and forcing councils to raise council tax, and at the same time asking to take the blame. Mr. Mayor, the government's politically motivated decisions leave our social services at an all-time risk. Mr. Mayor, it's amazing to see that while the government couldn't find the social care funding for the most needed vulnerable people, they have managed to find billions of pounds for their own constituencies through the different sources of funding. Mr. Mayor, we remember that a few months ago, levelling of funding, £5 billion, 5 billions, it's not million, 5 billions, for example, went to the wealthy conservative voting areas rather than the private areas. They have used a formula to tunnel the money to rich areas like Richmond, Newark. You know where this constituency? Robert Jenrick's constituency, Rishi Sunak's constituency, but not in Redbridge. Not in Redbridge, Mr. Mayor. Their funding formula forced councils like Redbridge into the lowest need category. As leader mentioned earlier, it is a shameful example, Mr. Mayor, the way in which they are channeling public money to their rich constituencies. Mr. Mayor, it is disgrace to see that the Redbridge residents have been denied from this funding they deserve by the Tory government, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Redbridge is one of the boroughs that suffered most by COVID-19. The deprivation and the food banking have been rising rapidly. Mr. Mayor, Redbridge Council lost nearly £63 million, as the previous speakers mentioned, from this government over the last 10 years. Thanks to our outstanding leadership, clever thinking and effective financial management, we didn't have to close any service. Instead, we didn't close any service. Instead, opened 3 new leisure centers, the swimming pools, as the leader mentioned, more libraries, community hubs, beautiful parks. Mr. Mayor, the list goes on. These are the exemplary evidence of excellent leadership, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we all know that the social care service is in need of reform, but the government failed. The government failed to provide clarity and certainty about how all these services will be funded in future. Mr. Mayor, We don't know what would be the next year's settlement and a meaningful long-term sustainable solution to the future crisis. Mr. Mayor, with an aging population, it's inevitable that the cost and needs will continue to rise for social care services. Therefore, the government must reform the social care funding. Mr. Mayor, it's also time for the government to realize and leave aside the political biasness and invest on COVID hard-hit boroughs like Redbridge. I hope the government recognizes that and listen to that. And I also hope that the party opposite, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for conservative groups to join us. As they say about cross-party consensus, they say many times about the, working together. And this is an opportunity for them. Come and join for fair funding for Redbridge. And I support this motion, Mr. Mayor, and I hope the party opposite understand that and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Berlin next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This government is delivering the most comprehensive local government funding and support package this country has ever seen. And yet the leader of the council is intent on playing party politics with this motion. We saw last year the Labour begging bold political petition, and today we have the new version, which is this begging bold political motion. So whilst we would all like more money, we will not be criticising the government for the sound way in which they are dealing with the country's finances in this difficult period. Our government is doing a brilliant job protecting residents, both with financial support for individuals and financial support for businesses, and with the incredible vaccine rollouts. So I'm proud to be a member of the Conservative Party. Mr. Mayor, this week we have had a day of reflection, a year on from lockdown, and Redbridge Conservative Group would like to pay tribute and thank all our Redbridge Council officers and staff, many of whom have been on the front line of the fight against the pandemic. Our officers have worked tirelessly to deliver council services to residents. Officers also have had to manage the administration's overspends on council services, underspends and slippages on capital projects, and Labour's increased reliance on borrowing, as caused mainly by this administration's financial mismanagement and waste. This is a theme which has been continuous since they took charge in 2014. Mr. Mayor, residents want the council to support local jobs and businesses, support local neighbourhoods and high streets to thrive, protect family finances and support our key worker heroes. To make this crucial work possible, it is vital that this Labour administration control their budget and finances properly. Mr. Mayor, residents want a council leader to take action that helps residents, and they don't want a council leader who thinks he can solve a problem by simply writing a letter. And Mr. Mayor, this motion tells a story. This motion shows that the administration are incapable of running the finances responsibly. Redbridge Conservative Group have no confidence in Councillor Atherwell's ability as leader. And the best solution for Redbridge residents, if he can't deal with council finances properly, will be for Councillor Atherwell to resign immediately and hand over to someone who can do the job properly. Following this meeting, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Linda Huggett will be writing to the Government Minister expressing Redbridge Conservative Group's concerns about the reasons given for the lack of sufficient government funding, and will ask them to carry out an investigation into why Redbridge continue to have a funding shortfall. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I will now ask Councillor Rai to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I certainly have confidence in Councillor Berlin. I really hope that he remains as the deputy leader, maybe next to leader of their group, because that will just make things a lot easier for us. Councillor Berlin talks about a begging bowl. I don't think that he should be calling the residents of this borough who deserve the money and the funding from government beggars. I think that's a disgraceful way of defining what our residents deserve. He spoke about the staff He spoke about the staff. I heard that distinctly. He spoke about our hard-working staff, and yet he brought forward a motion at the last full council to stop our staff having a pay rise, a minuscule 2.75% pay rise, and he wanted to stop it. And he dares to pretend that he cares about our staff. He then talks about their government and their sound way of managing the finances. 37 billion wasted on a track and trace service would fund local government for the next 5 years. That's what it would do, and that's what it was wasted. But Mr. Mayor, I have to insist that you do give Councillor Vasey more time to speak, because nothing is more entertaining than that. And I think that he was speaking allegedly to a motion. Only he'll know which motion, though. He did speak about Ilford, and I suppose South Woodford Library is in Ilford that we've invested in. I suppose as we welcome Woodford Town back and Ashton's playing fields are in Ilford. I suppose Woodford Green Library is in Ilford. I suppose the one.
Councillor Rai, we lost you. What to do in a situation like that?
Now, just going back to the motion, we all know that budget setting has been difficult. It's been difficult for every council of every hue, in every borough. They've had problems. We've seen the financial failure of councils. We've seen the draining of resources. We've seen cutting of services. It's a fact. It doesn't matter whether it's us, whether it's a Tory council, whether it's a Liberal council. It's happening. Social care has never been more valued. The work of the last 12 months has been vital, and it's no exaggeration to say it's been life-saving. But we are amongst the most underfunded and the lowest funded boroughs in the country, and certainly in London. Social care reform hasn't happened. We're waiting for that. That's their government. 11 years in power, and they're still talking about the Labour government. The white paper still not delivered, and all they do, and this is what they support opposite, is they lump the responsibility on council taxpayers. And since 2015, every local government settlement has included the council tax rise as part of them. It's not a choice, it's part of the settlement. So really, our borough is being treated like third-class citizens. Our residents are treated as third-class citizens. And if we look at the COVID settlement, let's have a look at the COVID settlement for a moment. In the toughest year that our borough has faced, that the country's faced, the world's faced, in the funding formulas that we received in this last 12 months, Redbridge, out of 32 boroughs, because I won't include the City of London, was 25th in the COVID grant. And when you look at it per head, we were 26th. Let's just think about that. Across London, 26th per head funding for COVID. It's to balance the budget and not decimate reserves and not decimate services is nothing short of miraculous for our borough to have done that. And yet we have to be lectured by Howard Berlin, Mr. Mayor, about how to balance the finances. He wouldn't last 5 minutes in his hands, not 5 minutes. So let's campaign. They talk about campaigning and cross-party. They love to talk about cross-party work so they can have a say, maybe. Maybe someone else will listen to them apart from the other 11 that they've got in their room. So why don't we campaign together? This is the campaign here to show residents that we're united. Here's a campaign here to say, let's fund us properly. And I would easily, have no problem challenging a Labour government. If they were treating local government like this, I'd have no issue questioning and challenging a Labour government to fund us properly. So if our borough is underfunded, and we know that, so I say to the opposition, are you going to stand with Redbridge, or are you going to stand with your callous Tory government? They say, Mr. Mayor, every council, they tell us how they're here for the residents. I'm going to have to hear something about a song line sooner or later from Councillor Berlin, and tell us about how much he cares about the borough. So why don't you show us that? Why don't you demonstrate that today? Why don't you show us that you can be their voice and send a united message to government, or you can ignore the voters? Because today, Mr. Mayor, if they ignore this motion, then they lose all credibility as councillors, as representatives, and as residents, and they prove that they're not here for the people of the borough. So the clock is ticking. We have an election next year. Let's see where their loyalty lies.
Can you please
Does it lie with the residents of the borough, or does it lie with Boris? Mr. Mayor, I'll be supporting this motion. It's the right thing to do, and if they had any integrity across the other side of the chamber, they would support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Your time is up. Thank you very much. I now call upon the Leader of the Council, Councillor Athwal, to reply to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to both Councillor Vasey and to Councillor Berlin for the entertainment. But this is the serious business, because leadership brings responsibility. Opposition, you can just make hollow noises. Like a drum, empty drum, you make the noise but deliver nothing. Councillor Vasey, your wife is not the only one who is working hard to save residents. It's admirable what she does. But to keep shoving it down our throat again and again, none of my three who've got husband, wife, daughter working for the NHS, they kept their calmness and they listened. In terms of your attack on council tax, I have here the letter written by Robert Jenrick on the 27th of November to Conservative council leaders. It's a nasty, nasty, disingenuous letter. So I'll talk about council tax since you brought it up. It says here in one of the paragraphs, it says, within this, councils will have access to additional £1 billion social care next year. He promises £1 billion, Councillor Vasey. Open your ears and listen, sir. Mr. Mayor, in the same sentence, it says this social care fund next year is made up of £300 million grant, £300 million grant, and basically saying, and 3% adult social care precept. This callous government is saying, we will give you the money, but 300 million will be the grant. 700 million pounds will have to come from raising your council tax. That is an instruction from this Conservative government. It means we give 300 million and your residents will give 700 million, which is the 3% council tax rise. So I'll take no lectures from some entertainer who lives, on some other planet. The letter, Mr. Mayor, goes on and says, beyond social care, we're protecting frontline services. Jenrick has the cheek to say he's protecting frontline services, and he says by increasing the annual settlement allocation in line with inflation, we're allowing local authorities to increase council tax by up to 2% next year without holding a referendum. What that letter is saying, Mr. Mayor, it's saying we, the government, are protecting frontline services by allowing you to raise council tax. It's in our funding formula, and if you don't do it, don't come to us for money. And of course, number 3, it says in the letter, of course, the threshold is not a cap, and councils continue to have the option, the cheek of it, option of increasing local taxes by holding a referendum, giving local people the ultimate say. If that wasn't enough, you can hold a referendum to see if turkeys will vote for Christmas. That is what this government is saying, Mr. Mayor. This is what Councillor Vasey, in all his entertainment, was trying to hide, that the callous Conservative propaganda that he stands for is basically saying, you will have to raise council tax, else we will give you no funding. The council has absolute zero control over this. As Councillor Reyes said, we're 31st out of 32 for adults. We're 32nd out of 32 for adult social care. We're 26th for COVID grants. But we are one of the most prudent, financially prudent councils in the country, Mr. Mayor. We've had £200 million downturn. And Councillor Berlin has the cheek to say local government is funded better than ever. What nonsense. What planet is he living on? The party political broadcast that he gave, which is basically, let's try and muddy the waters, say anything, and hopefully the residents will not remember. The residents are not fools. That's why you're a rump of your former self. Look, count your councillors, Mr. Berlin. Redbridge residents, are you saying they're not worth it? Are you saying, honestly saying, that we shouldn't be fighting for them to get more funding when we're one of the lowest funded councils? Unbelievable, clueless. So basically, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Berlin is thanking the staff, but thank yous do not pay the bills. This is the same councillor who at the last motion sat on the fence, couldn't actually bring himself to say the NHS deserves more pay. That's what he needed to say. History will judge him. Whenever there's been a vote in this chamber, he's been on the wrong side of history, and he continues to be so.
Your time is up, please. Your time
And I finish off.
Please.
I finish off, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the personal attacks. I welcome them, because when they have nothing left in the tank, they then come for the man. I got broad shoulders. Bring it on. Bring it on. Thank you.
Thank you. The substantive motion will now be put to the vote. Can I ask please those who are against voting against the motion, raise your hand.
Yeah, everyone is against the residents.
Yeah. I can't see. Can you say?
No votes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any abstentions? Yes.
We have 11 abstentions, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. We have 11 people have abstained. 11 members have abstained. Therefore, the motion is agreed. We now move on to the third and the final motion. I call upon Councillor Mrs. Clark to move the motion about supporting the Women's Night Safety Charter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I'm pleased to bring this Women's Nighttime Safety Charter motion to the Council tonight, it is with a heavy heart my reasons for so doing. The murder of Sarah Everard struck a chord with every one of us and made people, especially women, stand up and demand things to change. I'm pleased this motion is cross-party, and when I put it forward, I had no doubt it would get full support across this entire council. The Women's Nighttime Safety Charter is a very simple document and outlines how we as a borough can implement some changes and safeguards to promote women's safety. I'd like to thank Councillor Atwell for the measures he's put in place so very quickly. I really appreciate that he's done so. I have been a victim of an assault one dark January evening at 9:30 at night in Gants Hill when walking home from a Rotary meeting. When I reported this incident to the police, I had to point out where the CCTVs were, and so that they could look at the assault, as they didn't seem to know. After requesting they watch the footage, the police came back to me with the response, "We think the man is local, so if you see him again, give us a call." I kid you not. I listened to reports on the news of women that have had similar experiences to me, and I felt it was my duty to do something. So again, I pushed for this charter to be considered by the council. Perhaps as a result of adopting this charter, one of the first things we could look at is the safety of the female councillors when they leave the town hall at night. Now that we no longer have a car park, I know that many of us think it unsafe to walk through Ilford at night. I am your nighttime champion for Redbridge, appointed by the Mayor of London, your mayor. And my job is to promote all issues and guidance given to me in that capacity. Some issues transcends politics, and this is one of them. Therefore, I'm disappointed with the response I received from this council when putting forward the issues I have had meetings with Amy Lemie about. The first time I put forward the nighttime safety charter was over 2 years ago. I was ignored. I informed you all about the late night levy and how your mayor thought it not a good idea. I was ignored. I have been trying to set up a nighttime business forum for the past year at the behest of your nighttime czar. I'm being ignored. I'm being ignored because I'm a Conservative and this is a Labour council, and that simply is not right. At no time have I ever been political, nor will I ever be political in my capacity as Redbridge Nighttime Champion. I consider it a privilege and respect the people that gave me that position to trust me to be unbiased. As I've said, some things transcend politics, and this is one of those times. This is not a competition. We are dealing with residents' livelihoods. Therefore, going forward, I would ask you all to support me and work with me on nighttime issues in this borough. Perhaps issues like this charter that should have been introduced 2 years ago. They will not be dismissed in future just because a Conservative brought it to you. Again, I would like to thank all of you, the entire council, and again, the leader, for their support on this motion tonight. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Solanki to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second this motion and reserve my rights to speak.
Thank you. I will now open it up for general debate. I've got the list of councillors. I'll be calling them to speak. They are Councillor Simon Ahmed, Boateng, Brewer, Garfield, Sue Nolan, and Councillor Coombe, and the leader of the council. So you don't need to worry about it, and I'll make sure that you all get an opportunity to speak. Can I ask Councillor Simon Ahmed to speak next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the floor. And thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, my apologies. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Clark, to propose this motion. I begin my speech asking a simple question, like who is afraid of the dark? I'm sure everyone in this meeting tonight would have different answers, but the women, almost everyone, might relate how darkness connect to feeling unsafe, often feeling vulnerable. Mr. Mayor, our public spaces are used and experienced very differently by men and women. I was taught to adopt different strategies, like avoiding certain routes, holding onto my keys, putting a heavy water bottle inside my bag to use it if ever being attacked, or even be on the phone all the time with someone when I was traveling alone at night. Compromising my individual right to participate without fear in public spaces after dark has been part of my experience. My previous speaker, Councillor Scott, rightly shown how invisible the issue of women's safety in public spaces have been. However, that is another terrible tragedy, exposing the hostile nature of public spaces at night and calls for immediate action to prevent it. Now, there is discrepancy how violence against women, especially sexual harassment in public spaces, have been overlooked, often normalized, and even seen as inevitable when the violence against women in private space are regarded as violation of human rights. Our national evidence reveals 79% of women expect inappropriate comments, touching, or behavior on the night out towards them or their friends. 71% of women of all ages have experienced some form of sexual harassment in public space, and when it comes to reporting, over 95% women would not report harassment in public space. This is a grim reality. Mr. Mayor, the safety of women in public spaces is not a local agenda. Rather, it has become a global movement, demanding cities and public spaces address and acknowledge the unequal experience of different gender groups. Recently, I've been a delegate to the 65th UN Commission on the Status of Women and have heard from women across the world demanding the development and implementation of evidence and human rights-based approaches to prevent and respond to sexual harassment and other forms of sexual violence against women in public spaces. As a council, I'm pleased to see targeted safety measures being put in place very actively, including signing up for London Mayor's Women's Night Safety Charter. This means our council has pledged to actively creating a narrative that women also belong to public spaces at all times, day and night. This also complements the council's equality pledge, creating equal opportunities for women. Mr. Mayor, our initiatives contribute towards cultural shift from gender stereotypes, victim blaming in public spaces. We all are aware of our cities and nightlife leisure places are not historically designed for women. As a borough, we have opened our doors to businesses and consumers through nighttime economy, regardless of gender. Therefore, it is essential we enable organizations to develop a culture of belief, trust, and deeper understanding of the issues so that women are equally participating in space making. Now that we are coming out of COVID-19, we will go back to usual businesses, as the Cabinet Member of Finance spoke in the recovery plan, which will include nighttime economy. So signing the Charter at this point would strengthen institutions to deliver this goal. Mr. Mayor, the Charter will promote new norms and provide better data and services used to end violence and discrimination against women and girls in public spaces. It takes an intersectional approach, allowing local governments, grassroots women and girls, and women rights organizations and their partners to plan and implement programs in a way that address the different realities and needs for diverse community members. The listening exercise and becoming the signatory of the Charter proves our plan for the margins and the honest approach to bring the marginalized women into the center of our working culture, prioritizing everyday lived experience of minority women. And as the signatory of this Charter, we become one of the hundreds of the thousands that actually contribute and promise that we are going to look after the women during nighttime. We are going to make sure they are empowered, they take equal participation in the nighttime economy, and they feel safe. And I am honored to be selected as the nighttime champion. Mr. Mayor, I finished my speech with a quote from Amelia Earhart, who said, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity." Thank you for giving me the floor, and I will support this motion tonight. Thank you.
We seek your direction, Mr. Mayor.
Let me start again. Can I ask Councillor Boateng to speak next? Anita Boateng?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak, and I am speaking tonight in support of the motion. I want to start by saying that I know that everyone on both sides of the chamber wants things to be safer for women and girls. But I am frustrated to be sat on the opposite side of the chamber to councillors who have the power to make change that we have not seen. Women are tired of consultations and of listening exercises and of platitudes. And I really want to quote our Conservative leader, Councillor Linda Huggett, when she became leader of this of the Conservative group, who said, "Deeds, not words." So one thing that I think we can ask of the men on the opposite side of the chamber, Mr. Mayor, is for them to admit where there have been mistakes. It was a mistake to ignore the Women's Safety Charter for 2 years until the tragic and brutal murder of a young woman prompted action. I think it was a mistake to close the car park outside Ilford Town Centre and not to consult anyone, not least the women of this chamber, about it. And it's fine, some of the senior council members have access to a car park, but there is nothing to keep female councillors safe. So what I'm asking for tonight, in addition to signing this charter, is that we get a sense of urgency. We have spent 3 hours debating 2 letters from that Labour councillors want to send. But of course, we've left it until the end of the night, where there are fewer members of the public listening, to talk about women's safety. So do we really need a listening exercise? Residents in this borough are literally screaming at the Labour leadership, and they're saying the same thing. The press release sent out by Councillor Apple announcing that Redbridge will be signing this charter mentioned his own name 4 times, but police only twice. But that is what residents want. They want more police presence. They want stations not to be shut. Is this really news to the councillors on the other side of the chamber? We talk about action. We need urgent action. You talked about acting immediately to sign the Women's Charter, but as Councillor Clark has said, it was introduced nearly 2 years ago. Finally, I want to talk about men. What we're asking for. We're asking them to join us in changing an incredibly deep-rooted way of thinking. We have to confront the broader culture of harassment, of threats and humiliations that can characterize daily experiences for women, and we have to give women a voice. Tonight we've heard from Councillor Atwell, who said women are speaking and it's our time to listen. But the first time we heard from a woman was half an hour into the debate when Councillor Sue Noland was allowed to speak. By then, Councillor Atwell had already spoken for nearly 10 minutes. And the first thing he said in response to what Councillor Noland contributed was to call her dishonest. It was 45 minutes before a Labour woman spoke. We've had fewer than 5 Labour women speak tonight about anything unrelated to this Women's Charter. I cannot believe that the women opposite believe that is adequate. Councillor Atwell, when we spoke at the moving event for Sarah Everard on the 13th of March, said he would be a better ally and challenge misogyny wherever he sees it. I have been muted during debates. I've been called ranting and embarrassing tonight. Councillor Clark has been called rancid. I pointed out that Councillor Clark was not rancid, and I was accused of fake outrage by Councillor Howard. During the budget debate, Councillor Rye said he didn't believe I was being sincere in my remarks. Mr. Mayor, this is classic questioning of the sincerity of women that is rooted in sexism, and I cannot believe that if anyone cares about abuse for women, they will not pay attention to what happened in this chamber. If you care about the abuse that women face, start here. Start cleaning up what's happening from the leadership of the men opposite, and ensure that in addition to this consultation, we have serious cross-party debate and discussion that gives a real voice to women. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak.
Can I call upon Councillor Brewer next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to support the Mayor's Women's Night Safety Charter. It is quite right for us to back Mayor Sadiq Khan in urging businesses and venues to support the Charter. Sadiq has set out a bold vision for how a safe and thriving nighttime reopening can lead the recovery from the pandemic. He deserves our support. This charter is important as it challenges the culture that puts women at risk, but we all know that it is not a solution on its own. The safety of women and girls on London's streets has of course been brought into sharp focus following the murder of Sarah Everard. But part of the tragedy is that Sarah's horrific death was not unique. 2,075 women in England and Wales have been killed in the past decade. Official figures show that 1.4 million women in this country have been raped or faced attempted rape, including 144,000 in the last year alone. But we know that the number of rape convictions has fallen to an all-time low, with only 1,400 convictions in the past full year. Yes, Mr. Mayor, the fact is that the system in this country is letting 99% of rapists go free to offend again. There is currently a 307-page police bill before Parliament. While that bill does offer enhanced protection for statues, I am sorry to say that it does not offer enhanced protection for women and girls. It is intolerable that in 2021, we as women are still forced to adapt our lives to try and ensure our safety, and that this is seen by many as an acceptable solution to male violence. In the last 4 days, an online survey about street harassment of women and girls in our borough has had 1,700 responses. The average age that respondents had first suffered street harassment was 14. There must be an end to the culture of victim blaming. It is reprehensible and has no place in a society built on fairness and equality. It is the responsibility of government and of all our society to hear the voices of women, take action to address these injustices and challenge the culture that puts us at risk in the first place. I urge everyone here to support this motion and pledge your efforts to end violence against women and girls. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I call upon Councillor Coombe next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I'm speaking in favour of this motion and I support the aims of the Charter. I went on Reclaim the Night Marches as a student, and it was a misnomer then and it's a misnomer now, because you can't reclaim something that you've never actually had. And it isn't just at night that women don't feel safe, and that also needs to be acknowledged and addressed. So the world, in my view, is a physically gendered space dominated by men, whether they realise it or not, whether that's their intention or not. Catcalls to women walking to the tube in the morning, groups of men talking, smoking by shops, spreading across pavements, not moving aside to let people pass. Ask any group of women and there'll be stories of unwanted attention and threats. I'm not going to recount terrible stories here, but we could. Any group of women could. I'm just going to give you an example of the way that men use and dominate public spaces. So walking through Valentine's Park last week, chatting with my sister, there was a group of about 6 teenage boys on their way home from school, just walking along 3 abreast. So my sister and I automatically went single file so that they could pass, but they didn't move. They just carried on walking, totally oblivious to the fact that we were there. They didn't move to the side. You know, nice boys, not leery, not threatening in any way, but actually just owning all of that space. And we were the ones who just stepped aside because that's what we always do, instead of just fronting it out and just walking right through the middle of them. So this happens all the time. It happens so much that actually we probably don't even talk about it. We don't even discuss it, and we should report other things that happen. Other people have mentioned statistics, and according to the TfL website, 90% of unwanted sexual behaviour goes unreported. On their website, they've already got a number to text to report anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. So the text is 61016. Obviously, that's not for emergencies, but they say that you'll get a reply within 24 hours. And it actually says on their website, unwanted sexual behaviour is anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. You can report anything of a sexual nature: rubbing, groping, masturbation, leering, sexual comments, indecent acts, or sometimes people taking a photograph of you of a sexual nature without your consent. You don't have to prove that it was a criminal offence or intentional to report it. We can investigate that for you. That's what it says on the TfL website. I mean, I didn't expect to be talking about rubbing or groping or masturbation at full council. And if you're raising an eyebrow, you're surprised or shocked, then, you know, where have you been? Think of what it's like to see it, to be the object of that. So report it to stop it. Men don't be bystanders, and I don't just mean when you see something like this. What conversations are you involved in? Do you encourage the continuation of these attitudes by not bringing a halt to inappropriate and damaging talk about women? Having safe spaces in shops and things like that, as spoken about earlier, is fine, but it doesn't actually solve or address the core problem, and that's what we need to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I've still got 3-4 speakers, and just for your benefit, it will be Councillor Garfield, Councillor Sue Nolan, Councillor Joyce Ryan, and Leader of the Council, Councillor Atwell. Can I ask next Councillor Garfield to speak?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I'm really pleased to support this cross-party motion from the Mayor of London. But I'd just like to start really by giving a bit of a history lesson to Councillor Boateng, because it wasn't Linda Huggett that said deeds not words. It was actually the start of the suffragette movement. So that was actually going back to 1897. So maybe you really kind of like need to know your history. I'm sure Councillor Huggett would have liked to have said that, but it was certainly done way before she actually got on the council. I'm really proud of my group. I've been supported, I've been helped to progress, and never has my voice been curtailed, certainly not in this borough, certainly not in Redbridge. And I've been on a council for a long time in another borough, and yes, I've had my issues there, but certainly not in Redbridge. It was important that we kept this motion not political, as we were accused of being political on our last motion about the NHS. That we all so say we love, but yet aren't prepared to support. It's a shame some couldn't keep this non-political, but I want to focus on women and girls and their needs. I know this administration has and will always support any work that makes the lives of women and girls better, safer and empowering. And it's not really, Mr. Mayor, often that I have the opportunity to agree with the opposite side of this chamber, but on this occasion I would really like to welcome the opposition motion proposing the Women's Night, proposing that we sign the Women's Nighttime Charter. Nights out must be safe for everyone, especially for women. The Women's Night Safety Charter provides best practice guidance and a 7-point pledge to tackle harassment and ensure women feel safe at night, whether they're working, studying, travelling or partying. The Charter has been adopted into London-wide policy and signatories include over 25 venues, businesses, organisations and local authorities, and I'm pleased to see Redbridge is now one of those. Recently, thousands and thousands of women have also shared their experiences of harassment on social media. The Catcalls of London Instagram page had over 10,000 shared experiences in a few hours. Over the past few weeks, women have been sharing stories of harassment, fear, abuse and incidents that they have been afraid to voice in the past. The Charter is an excellent opportunity for us as a council to look holistically at the issue of women's safety. From sharing the proceeds of the nighttime income in donations to local charities and by ensuring that spaces are designed with the safety of women as paramount. This is a framework for how we in Redbridge can work together across the council, public, private and voluntary sector to make sure that all our women and young girls feel safe and confident on the streets of our borough. Redbridge communication strategy with residents has guided us well through the pandemic. We need to use our learning and apply the same skills in supporting women and young girls. Our hate crime has developed extensively over the last few years. Our hate crime work, has developed extensively over the last few years. We are well placed to consider the issue of misogyny within the third-party reporting mechanisms that exist already across the borough. But we need to make sure that more women and girls, women and women-led organisations are also involved in this process. And I know that this council is committed to do so. None of this will make any difference unless there is confidence among those that report harassment and discrimination to our services. We need to build a culture of belief, empathy and support to women that highlights Redbridge as a caring borough. We cannot afford to believe that the issue of women's and girls' safety is just a silo issue. I welcome the embedding of this in our new planning considerations. I do hope that we can revisit our progress on this in the coming months, as the events of recent weeks and the tragic death of Sarah Everard have shown. We need our women to be confident in our council and administration. We can only do this by taking assertive, practical steps to address their concerns. I welcome and support this motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Can I ask Councillor Mrs. Nolan next, please?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a very enjoyable evening being lectured to by Councillor Atwell and Councillor Rye for most of the evening, but thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'd like to talk about how women have the right to protest in a civilised manner, and what we've seen lately. Some of the scenes do not support that. Indeed, the scenes we've witnessed over the last few weeks were very distressing. I know the police were criticised in the way they handled the situation, and lessons can be learned. That Saturday, it unleashed a huge amount of emotion, not just what happened, but about a repressed sense of women's safety, and rightly so. The police are in a difficult position and continue to look after the public during the pandemic and asked to do a job they've never done before in difficult circumstances. And in most situations, the police manage those very well. They put themselves on the front line every time. However, Mr. Mayor, London is generally a safe city, and incidents of what happened to Sarah are rare. My heart goes out to her family, a young and beautiful girl murdered in a most cruel and horrendous way. And I cannot imagine her family are going through. Having daughters myself, I was always fearful when they went out and was always glad when I heard that key go in my front door to say they were home safely. But all too often, women do not feel safe travelling and working in London, especially using the tube or the use of multi-storey car parks or socialising with their friends. Since the Town Hall car park closed down, I feel incredibly vulnerable leaving a council meeting at 11 o'clock in the evening and being expected to walk under an underpass where there's drug detritus everywhere, or in the nearby multi-storey car park, well, drug dealing is being done openly. Women should feel particularly safe when performing our duties for the public and our residents. And I will add, actually, I'm delighted to see that Councillor Ahmed has been appointed as our champion. And Councillor Ahmed, would you make that your first point of call, please, to make sure that we women feel safe walking home at night? Because I do not feel safe walking in Ilford Town Hall of an evening, especially leaving the council chamber. I also know that some senior members do have designated parking spaces, so I think it's only right that women should have. Women should be allowed to enjoy an evening out without fear of being harassed or sexually molested when out with friends. Staff at various establishments should be trained to firstly believe women when they say and act and deal with the situation. And all too often they are not believed or even taken seriously. Mr. Mayor, I won't go into great detail anymore because we've had lots of excellent speeches tonight from all the women in this chamber, and I support this charter wholeheartedly, and I pay tribute to Councillor Mrs. Clark for putting this forward and working so hard for this change and working for all the women in this borough. It's indeed times that must change, and I hope this will be the start of a complete change in the way women are treated in the future. And can I add that there are occasions in this council, Mr. Mayor, when I have been spoken to in not in a way that I would think is fair, and I really object to the way, firstly, I was even called dishonest tonight, but I've been called lots of other things as well. So please, I urge the men of this chamber to think very carefully how they treat women in future, and please treat us with a little bit more courtesy and civility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly support this motion.
Thank you. Can I now ask Councillor Mr. Ryan next?
You're muted, Joy. You're muted.
Press again. Yeah, better.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, like everyone else, I hope in the chamber, I support this motion. It's because, as Councillor Mrs. Nolan said, they've been very eloquent, very fully detailed, supporting speeches tonight about the motion and how necessary it was. I actually wanted to say I congratulate Councillor Mrs. Clark for her persistence over several years to actually bring this motion and bring this charter, because she has persistently tried and endeavoured, and I'm not a party political person, but I think she deserves the credit for that and what she has done and achieved. And I do hope that we will see some results. and that things will improve. But I certainly don't feel safe. I don't feel I've got a safe space in Ilford, and I don't think it should just be women that feel safe. I think everyone should feel safe, but this of course is about women. And it's good that we can actually talk about women and girls, and we don't have to be politically correct and say them, but we can actually speak as we wish to find. But thank you, Ruth, for bringing this charter, and thank you, Councillor Solanke, for seconding it, and thank everyone for their support. And of course, actions now will speak louder than words. It's how we, the council, do something to actually make us feel safer and make everyone feel safer, because unfortunately a lot of the time we don't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I call upon Councillor Diaz-Aswal next? Leader of the council, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just trying to unmute myself.
Yeah.
I'd like to start off, Mr. Mayor, just by saying that tonight I used a phrase to describe two Conservative councillors, male and female, making bombastic comments on cuts to our beloved NHS as ranting. I used exactly the same non-gendered language when speaking about a male colleague too, Councillor Clark Basie. I want that on record, that made that two councillors attacking the NHS. That's why I did it. Mr. Mayor, I support this motion. Earlier in March, a young woman was abducted and murdered in London. Sarah was just walking home, and now her loved ones are enduring unspeakable pain and loss. Sarah's death has sparked a national conversation, a moment of shared grief. We've all seen posts online from women telling their stories, sharing their experiences. Many of us have had. Mr. Mayor, could I ask people to just go on mute, just as a courtesy? Thank you. Many of us have had conversations with our families or within our communities about what Sarah's murder has meant for the women in our lives, what it has meant for all of us. What happened to Sarah is a tragedy, but it does not stand alone. We have heard over the past few weeks from women and girls across the UK, violence, abuse, harassment is not new and is not rare. It's clear that action must be taken to make our streets, our homes and our communities safer for women and girls. In Redbridge, we're absolutely committed to this goal. And I'm proud to support this cross-party motion supporting our council signing up to the Mayor of London's Women's Night Safety Charter. The charter which we signed up to earlier this month is just one small, very small step of our council taking to demonstrate to local women that we take their safety seriously. The charter is a first step along a long road towards building a society that treats women as equals, a society where a woman can walk home alone and feel safe. We know we need to take action, but first we must listen. And that's why alongside the charter as a council, we're also launching an in-depth listening exercise and inviting women and girls from across Redbridge to share their thoughts, feelings and experiences with us in a completely safe space. We want to hear from as many women and community groups as possible, so we can fully understand the steps we, the police, need to take to make Redbridge feel safe. Our first listening event will take place in mid-April, and we will hold 4 further events through May. It's vital that women feel comfortable joining these events, and that's why we're asking people to sign up in advance so we can keep the meetings small. Women officers of the council and women police officers will facilitate the meetings and will bring together the stories of all present with their permission, in order to create an action plan to tackle violence against women and girls in our borough. Alongside the events, we will run a 12-week survey so we can hear from as many women as possible. At the memorial event a couple of weeks ago, I said there was an epidemic of violence against women and girls taking place in our country and across the world. I said that everyone should feel safe and be safe walking home alone. I want to make that statement a reality in Redbridge. I want to join with my neighbours, with our communities, and make Redbridge a safe place for women. Signing up to the Mayor's Charter will go some way towards acknowledging the issue and tackling the abuse, that there is so much more to do. It is a long road ahead, but we are ready and we are completely committed. We can do more, and we will, and that is my promise to you all tonight. Thank you.
Can I now call upon Councillor Solanki to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's unfortunate that a cross-party motion has become politicised by some, but I am not here for party politics. I want to speak about women and what they need. I am proud of my group. I've always been encouraged, and women's voices are always heard. Following the tragic death of Sarah Everard, there's been an outpouring of grief and anger from women, and going on to describe their own experiences. Sarah Everard was a young woman who had a whole life ahead of her. She was just walking home. From wearing bright clothes to phoning her friend, she did everything right. But why is it that women must do these things though? Why is it that my fingers are gripped to my keys every time I walk home at night? Why is it I must take out my headphones so I can become more aware of my surroundings? Why do cars stop unnecessarily to call out at me? Why do I speed up? Why do men feel it okay to touch women inappropriately when on a night out? This is not normal, yet for so many women, this has become the new norm and so familiar. This has been happening for decades, and women have had to feel the anxiety and fear of just being a woman, whether that be out in public places or even in what should be a safe space at home. Approximately 23% of women in London have said they feel unsafe in London at night. 20% of women have experienced some type of sexual assault since the age of 16. And 79% of women aged 18 to 24 said they expected inappropriate comments, touching, and behaviour on a night out towards them or their friends. This is simply not okay. Women and girls' safety at night should be taken seriously and should be a priority. This cannot just be for the next couple of months, but everlasting change is needed in the mindset of who think this behaviour towards women is okay. I am glad that we are working collaboratively in signing up to the Mayor of London's Women's Night Safety Charter. This is a step in the right direction, and it's really good that this administration is going further in undertaking a listening exercise to talk to women and hear about their experiences. We all have a responsibility in making sure we play our part for not only this generation, but for future generations to come, to make sure our streets are safe. So for those who come after us, our children, our grandchildren can live in a better world. Today, I challenge every man in this full council meeting, councillor or council officer, what will you do to be my ally? I second this motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I now call upon Councillor Mrs. Clark to reply to the motion.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the women tonight for their contribution. I've got to tell you, each of you were excellent, really. I've made notes what some of you have said. I'd like to thank Councillor Ahmed and wish her well for the future in her new role. Whatever support she wants from us, the Conservatives, we will give her. I'd also like to mention the phrase, deeds not words, which Linda said at the very first council meeting. She'd said that because the week before, me, her and Sue Nolan had met Amelia Pankhurst's granddaughter, and we had a real conversation with the lady, And she was advocating then exactly what you're all saying tonight. So that is where Linda got that from. And it was very enlightening, and I was very proud to meet her. It's a shame. Emily Pankhurst's granddaughter was telling us the same issues that her grandmother and mother had. I'd also like again to thank Councillor Atwell. Your speech tonight on this motion was excellent. I know you will carry this forward. I know you will listen. And sorry to bang on, but I did take this to officers, honestly, 7-8 months in a row. I got totally ignored. I know I was told he took it to the cabinet member. It was ignored. I wished it hadn't have been. I think if I'd have been Labour, if I'd have been Councillor Solanke, they would have listened. And it's a shame that we missed a trick. Let's not do that in future. When it's issues like this, like I said, it transcends politics. Let's forget the politics. Let's get these issues, not just women. There's going to be other ones coming forward that we work together. And thank you all again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. The substantive motion will now be put to the vote. The motion is agreed, I take it?
Agreed.
Agreed unanimously. Thank you.
Agreed.
Now we move on to agenda item number 15, urgent business.
Mr. Mayor, there is no urgent business.
Agenda number.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, could I please, if I may, sir, just take this opportunity tonight to put on record and congratulate Councillor Mrs. Huggett on the birth of her grandchild tonight. I think it's fantastic news, and certainly I think you know, we want to send her our best wishes and a long, happy, let's just say I was going to say no, Councillor Mrs. Huggett is young, so a long, happy sort of looking after a grandchild. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all echo that. Thank you. Agenda item number 16. Motion to exclude the public. I think that there's no item exempt item on the agenda this evening. That concludes the council meeting. Thank you and good night to all of you. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good night, Mr. Mayor and everyone.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Good night,
Yeah, you don't have to walk home in the dark anyway. You're in your homes.